It's Wednesday. That means it's time for the ultimate labor of love in YouTube fantasy football content, the SPAGS Rankings. Who's a superior player? Who's in a great spot? Who's just mid? We're going to find out as we rank every single player bit by bit using advanced analytics from Sports Info Solutions, of course, Pro Football Reference as well. We'll put it all together here to rank these guys, figure out who's the elite players and who are just guys that are getting lucky every week with the situation they are in. You can see the screen is ready here. We're going to line these guys. We'll set the table. Of course, it's Aaron Rodgers, as we always do. As an example, just get people familiar with the concept of the SPAGS rankings. Of course, we're using expected points added metrics. We're also looking at the raw numbers. We're just trying to figure it all out as we go. So Aaron Rodgers, of course, injured for the year as a player, kind of been a league average QB in terms of the skills he's put out there the last year or so. So he would be a player that you would put out for the year, bad spot, mid spot. But he's, as a player, close to a mid tier, an average player. So we will put him right here. Of course, Aaron Rodgers. We should also briefly talk about Zach Wilson because I don't believe there is a Zach Wilson image in here. Zach Wilson on the year certainly looking a little better than he has historically, but still a negative 0.3 EPA per pass, negative 0.28 EPA per dropback. Not doing great under pressure, though could be doing worse, negative 0.6 EPA there. Deep throws, 0.02 EPA. So again, everybody on Sunday night saw Zach Wilson going, oh, he outperformed Patrick Mahomes, more completions, less interceptions, all that stuff. He's still not a player you're trying to go to. That said, he's playing Denver this week, so we'll revisit that one on Friday. But definitely one with Zach Wilson that he's not changing a lot as a player here, even though people might have some positive steam going on. Shout out our guy, Aaron. Shout out to the chat as always, of course. Appreciate the Squirt Squad being here, the Splash Play community. Always fun to keep this going, keep it lively. So keep me honest over the course of the next, I don't know, fucking 2.5 hours, however long the sakes. Anthony Richardson, let's go over to him. Of course, he is a player that I am deeply in the bag for on the year, though. Analytically, still not an outlier. Negative 0.08 EPA per pass, negative 0.07 EPA per dropback, negative 0.4 EPA when being pressured, which is fine, honestly, given how mediocre of a passer he's been so far. 0.4 EPA on deep throws for him with 6 deep throws a game. So that number is coming up for AR pretty markedly. That bodes well for the future. And of course, the run game is what we're looking for. 7.7 intended rushes per game, putting up 44 rushing yards per game. That's still a great spot for AR. You'd like to see him be closer to 10 rushing attempts a game. That's going to be where he gets that Jalen Hurts tier, that Justin Fields tier historically, if not this week, if not this season. But Anthony Richardson, to me, I think still performing a little bit under average, but still in a great spot. But again, could be a little better, even though we got 30 fantasy points for what the usage was in that last week. I think bodes pretty well. All right, let's keep going here. Again, one day I'm going to make good time in these videos. I don't know if that day will be today, but we will find out. Brock Purdy, another guy that's making some headlines this week just because of the fact that, and analytically, he's been looking really good compared to all the guys out there. Some positive tweets about him. A lot of people, too, I saw on social media bashing EPA metrics because of how Brock Purdy can outrank Trevor Lawrence, how Brock Purdy can outrank all these guys that I know are darlings of people who've been drafting teams all offseason long. That said, Brock Purdy is in one of the most efficient offenses in football, and that's showing out with his numbers as well. 0.33 EPA per pass, 0.33 EPA per dropback is a very strong number. Negative 0.3 EPA when being pressured. That's fine. Still has a 5% touchdown rate on those throws. No picks. He needs to open it up more downfield. Just 2 deep shots per game, good for a 0.7 EPA, and also just 3 rushes. So the spot is not as perfect as can be. If he were running a little bit more, if he were taking more deep shots, you could talk about putting him all the way to the right here in terms of being a great spot. Instead, though, he is like a very well-run train conductor. We're not going to go for the full Mussolini reference here, but Brock Purdy is just keeping things running. He's keeping things moving. He is doing what he has to do in the Niners offense. And that to me means that he is currently not a top tier superior player, not going to have the rushing upside of some other guys, even a Daniel Jones, but he goes right here. Very good spot. I don't expect him to have a lot of down days. I do think Brock Purdy, for the most part, the issue is just that he doesn't have that explosive ceiling of an AR, of a Justin Fields, of a Jalen Hurts, of a Josh Allen, of a Mahomes, obviously, as well. He's just not going to get to those levels. Again, shout out to the people filing in. Appreciate all you guys here squirting away. My pal Ross. Always good to see you guys here. And again, I know this is more of a performative monologue. It's head talk about the players I'm ranking every week, but I do appreciate you guys chiming in here. And of course, feel free to nitpick anything I say as well as we go. Bryce Young coming up next. Of course, I have been deeply against Bryce Young to start the year. Some social media as well that I've seen people pointing out how stupid the Carolina Panthers were not to draft AR, to instead draft Bryce Young. I was saying that in March. I was saying that in April. But I do think with Bryce Young, things are going to get better. To start the year, though, it's looking pretty bad. Negative 0.4 EPA. He's on target 67% of the time. Negative 0.31 EPA per drop back. Negative 1.5 EPA when getting pressured. So much like guys we pointed out in the past, Jordan Love falls apart when getting pressured. Lamar is falling apart when getting pressured. This is a guy in Bryce Young that could have a really big collapse one day if he faces a team that really gets home heavily with that negative 1.5 EPA. He's got 2.5 deep shots per game. It's terrible on those, negative 0.7 EPA. He's also barely running 2.3 rushes per game, positive EPA on those, that's 0.24. But still, not a great spot for Bryce Young. He's not running enough. He's not playing that well. The weapons, they want to apparently acquire a number one receiver. I don't know who you get, a Devontae Adams maybe, but Devontae Adams getting 8 fucking shitty targets a game from Bryce Young is not doing it a lot for me. So for right now, the spot's not that great. The player's not that great. I think he goes about right here. And again, I do think with those pressure stats, there is going to be a collapse coming for Bryce Young at some point. We have seen him, I've said, look like a deer in the headlights out there. He looks terrified in the pocket. He doesn't know what to do. He moves around when he's actually got room to step up and throw. Bryce Young is just not ready for primetime, I feel. And that is something that I think we're going to see rear its ugly head when the matchup does allow. CJ Stroud, he is going to be the opposite side of this. 0.1 EPA per pass, 0.1 EPA per drop back. Looking good there. When he's pressured, he faces some struggles, negative 0.8 EPA. But again, about half as bad, or half as good rather, as Bryce Young would be under those pressure metrics. He's not throwing it deep very much when he is. He is crushing 2 deep shots per game. Of course, I qualify deep shots as 20-plus air yards. Got a 1.5 EPA on those. 25% touchdown rate when throwing a deep shot. So you want to see CJ Stroud get this ball downfield more. Still not a great spot, obviously. I think the control he has of the offense is a positive. The offensive line, though, being hurt again, not going to bode well for CJ Stroud, even though he's acquitting himself about as well as you can for a rookie with a shoddy offensive line. But that said, he's performing pretty well. Not quite Brock Purdy tier. Again, doesn't have the rushing upside, so he can't get to a great spot. But I do think CJ Stroud right now looks like a QB that is a very good one for stacks. Nico Collins, we're going to talk about him in a little bit. He's been an outlier player. He's going to rise to the tide. When Tank has a good game, when Nico has a good game, you're going to see Stroud have a good game. If those guys don't go off, Stroud probably has more of a mid game. He's just not going to add you the rushing, not going to give you 5 to 10 rushes per game that really add value. Dak Prescott coming up next. Dak is one of the most efficient players on the year. 0.09 EPA per pass, 0.12 EPA per dropback. On pressure play, it's just a negative 0.4 EPA, which pressure plays are going to mostly be negative. So that's not the worst thing in the world. You just want to see guys sort of control things, keep it in pocket, keep it from getting completely out of hand with a really bad negative EPA when getting pressured. So that is a fine number for Dak. Just 1.5 deep shots per game, good for a 1 EPA per target. So Dak, again, this is what we talked about with this Texas coast offense, which by fucking what coast does Texas have? I guess South Padre Island. Does that count? Either way, that's what they're running in Dallas. Not attacking downfield at all, not running a whole lot either, just 2.8 rushes for Dak. But everything Dak does is incredibly efficient. So once again, I don't think this is a great spot. I think that he is playing out of his mind, though, relative to not a lot of opportunity, not an aggressive, not an inspirational offense by any stretch, not a Kellen Moore offense. But Dak, I think you put him as a better version of CJ Stroud, a little bit less volume, a little bit less good game scripts going his way with that Dallas defense still being better than Houston's. But I think Dax is playing really well for what they're doing. It's just they're asking him to not do very much. Opposite side of the equation, it's going to be Mr. Daniel Jones, negative 0.4 EPA per pass, negative 0.3 EPA per drop back. So when he's dropping back and scrambling, he's adding value. When he's dropping back and just passing, he's doing pretty poorly. 70% on target rate is okay on his passes, but so it's maybe not entirely his fault. I really don't I watched the Monday Night Football game, like I'm sure a lot of you guys did. With Daniel Jones, I'm not sure what the core issue is. Obviously, they were getting a lot of pressure there, pocket collapsing, all of that. But it does feel like Daniel Jones, just bad play calls, non-aggressive play calls. They're running it on 3rd and 10 when the game is still in range. It's just a lack of trust for Daniel Jones. If that's the case, things might not look better for him unless they just completely open it up. But 2 deep throws per game, negative 0.5 EPA on those. So maybe that's part of it, is that he's just not playing that well in those situations. But 8.5 rushes per game is still pretty good. So I think that Daniel Jones currently playing worse than Anthony Richardson, but playing with similar upside, similar capability to have a ceiling day. So I actually will put Daniel Jones here. He is a more of a mid player, but still a really great spot. Any player who's at quarterback getting 8 rushes per game, hard to argue it. Gulf of Mexico goes pretty big. Ever heard of Galveston, Corpus? All right, defending Texas here. Shouts to our guy Tyler, of course, the emo cowboy based out of Texas. I still don't think you call it a Texas Coast offense. I'm sorry. I don't agree with the name. I think it's just a way to try to make it sound more progressive than just a fucking check down West Coast offense. But you guys know I am very much against the Mike McCarthy regime in Dallas, even though, again, looking good. It's just, I want teams to play for volume, to play downfield, to create splash plays. I know, shocking, as one of the founders of the YouTube channel called Splash Play. Derek Carr, his numbers continue to regress. That AC joint sprain made him look even worse than he might have normally made himself look. Negative 0.1 EPA per drop back, negative 0.1 EPA per pass, under pressure, negative 0.5 EPA, 2% touchdown rate on those plays. So he's just not doing a whole lot when pressured, not killing either. 4.5 deep shots per game. He's down to a 0.15 EPA. I think Derek Carr is actively killing the Saints. If I'm going to be honest about it, I think that when coming into the season, felt like his verticality, his desire to get the ball downfield would be a positive thing for him. Instead, what we're seeing so far is Derek Carr being banged up, Derek Carr not being as good as Taysom in terms of the efficiency metrics overall, not being as good as Jameis in terms of just being a no risk it, no biscuit kind of player. So I think Derek Carr's in a tough spot, and they're paying him so much money, they're going to keep trotting him out there. But I think he's got to go somewhere around here. The deep shots, the ability to get, they're letting him do enough. Like, he should be playing better. He's just not that good. So I think he goes right about here. Kind of a worse version of a spot than CJ Stroud. He's also, again, the shoulder injury will ding him a little bit for that one. But Derek Carr is just not doing a lot with what he's being given. A lot of opportunity, a lot of money, a lot of control of the offense, and he's just not playing like a guy who was worth the best ball shares that I think a lot of us landed on just because he had great pass catchers around him. That said, 13 checkdowns to Alvin Kamara. The more Derek Carr sucks, the more that he can't get the ball downfield accurately or well, the better it's probably going to look for Kamara. It's just a guy that can rack up underneath throws and was racking them up all offseason long. Deshaun Watson up next, of course, missed last week. We'll see if he gets back in there this week. Negative 0.25 EPA per pass, negative 0.2 EPA per drop back. Under pressure, he's another guy that's really bad. Negative 0.98 EPA on those plays. 4 deep shots per game. Is taking an 8% touchdown rate on those. So he just needs to get the ball downfield. The issue is, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, he's literally spinning around and throwing the ball backwards. It's not going to get you the results you want. I think he's playing like shit. I think he's playing like Derek Carr's here, but I do think the spot's not bad. The rushing upside, the ability to get downfield, he's got good weapons around him. Nick Chubb being in would certainly make it a little bit better, but I think Deshaun's spot's better. So I don't expect him to rise up here necessarily, but I think he can certainly get left to right here a little bit more. The spot week to week has got a ceiling to it. But again, if you see a guy have a bad game against Tennessee, which is probably the best get well spot for a downfield thrower like Deshaun, I don't know what the get well spot is then, but the usage is good enough, I think, that you can have some hope. You can get back on track. Desmond Ridder, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, negative 0.24 EPA per drop back. On target rate on his throws, a 65%. So not great in any sort of passing metric. Under pressure, he is also very bad, negative 0.1 or negative 1 EPA flat, when he's getting pressured, 2% interception rate on pressure plays. When he is throwing deep, he's doing okay, 0.2 EPA per pass on those, 3 deep shots per game, only 3.5 rushes. So definitely not as much rushing upside as these guys in the right spot here. Again, rushing QB is always going to push you more towards a great spot just because of the upside and the floor that gives you in fantasy football. But Desmond Ridder, I think, is in this tier. I think I would still put him in a better spot than the Sean. Some bench risk, obviously, for Desmond Ridder. I think if the Falcons continue to run bad, some shot you see Taylor Heineke, though they have been pot committed to Desmond Ridder in ways that surprise me. So Ridder, I think for now you put him here, but you could definitely make the case that the spot is a little bit closer to here. You know what? Let's just do it because there is a real chance that he gets benched. But the rushing upside, all of that, I would want to organically put him here normally. But man, going here, I think makes a lot more sense because he might just get taken out at some point. Like, that is definitely a very high likelihood, very high risk. Shooter playing so bad and no passing volume. Come on now. Got to be below Carr. It's just that he has weapons around him. Like, this could be a good spot. It doesn't take a whole lot for it to be a good spot. And he's not terribly inaccurate. Like, he's not great or anything. I think that it could get better. It's just a matter of him. Like, he needs to run closer to 5 to 7 times. He needs to get some of these easy completions and let his guy run after the catch. There's got to be better ways for it to work out for Desmond Ridder. But we are getting close, though, because Atlanta is a team that definitely can win the NFC South based on their defense. And right now, I think that with Ritter, he's just actively hurting him. So you can't get away with that forever. Devin Singletary, probably don't have to rank him. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he's not on the chart, but just FYI, played really poorly. Negative 0.6 EPA per dropback, negative 0.7 EPA per pass, negative 1.7 EPA when he got pressured, and he got pressured 17 times in that game, which is a lot. So Thompson-Robinson, not ready for prime time yet. Maybe can do it in a better matchup. That one against Baltimore, though, was not a good one. All right, let's go to real QBs who are actually playing games, even though Drew Lock is right here. Drew Lock looked pretty good. Drew Lock, yeah, put him in a superior player, not quite, but definitely better than Desmond Ritter. Would Drew Lock be better in Atlanta? I ask you this question. The answer, I think we can say, is yes. He'd be a lot better in Atlanta and would be a lot more fun. And Kyle Pitts would look like Noah Fant, which would be a big win for everybody. Geno Smith, 0.05 EPA per pass, 0.05 EPA per dropback, negative 0.25 EPA when he's getting pressured. So that's not that bad. 8% touchdown rate when getting pressured actually is very good for Geno. Just a pocket QB. He's not running as much this year. Only 2 rushes per game, good for a 0.04 EPA. Not throwing deep as much either, just 2.5 deep shots per game at a 0.4 EPA. I think that Geno is okay. Like, he's doing what he has to do. Kind of a worse version of the Dak spot is what I feel like. Maybe a slightly less efficient player as well. So Geno, I think, goes right here. He's not CJ Stroud in terms of the control of the offense. I think the upside is not there. We know Seattle historically just wants to run the ball if they can get away with it. So that's not great, where Stroud is getting a shot to really spread his legs, why do I keep saying that? I mean to say spread his wings, and I always say spread his legs. And that's not what the YouTube audience wants to see. But there we go. So Geno Smith, I think, of a poor man CJ Stroud in terms of the opportunity, but a slightly more efficient player right now. Truly blessed to be able to watch you and my fantasy foster parents, Stochastic at the same time. 2 setups. I didn't realize Stochastic goes at the same time. But yeah, I appreciate everybody who's here watching me live. Of course, if you watch after the fact too, we try to keep these as evergreen as possible and a week-to-week changing fantasy football ecosystem. But yeah, there we go. I knew Tyler would be on board for spreading legs. We definitely are spreading some legs today of various QBs. Spread wings. Why is it so hard for me to say spread wings? Guess you know where the brain's going. Jalen Hurts finally into the positives in EPA. Jalen Hurts has been one guy we've been targeting as somebody just underperforming on the year. He still definitely is underperforming, but 0.01 EPA per pass, 0.04 EPA per drop back, 69%. Not so nice catchable ball rate, but still okay. Negative 0.44 EPA when getting pressured, 5 deep shots per game, getting a 0.5 EPA on those, and 10 rushes per game. So still the best spot for Jalen Hurts. He is now safely above average. Jalen Hurts, I think, is in one of the best spots in the league still. The 10 rushes per game, the goal line work, the red zone work, the tush push / the bush push, if you want to go with our pal Matthew Berry. Of course, referencing the great Reggie Bush in that game against Notre Dame. Jalen Hurts is the best spot in the league still. Like, I think it's hard to argue. 10 rushes, that much opportunity, 5 deep shots per game. You're basically giving him an entire flywheel of being able to capture the best plays for fantasy football for a QB. So Jalen Hurts, I think, somebody that underperforming, but it just doesn't matter. Team's good, and he's going to be good enough. Jared Goff, negative 0.01 EPA per pass, negative 0.01 EPA per dropback, negative 0.6 EPA when getting pressured, 2.8 deep shots per game. So maybe that opens up a little bit more with Jameson Williams entering the fray, but not looking too great so far. Yeah, 0.33 EPA on his deep throws as well, but an 18% touchdown rate. So Jared Goff, you can make the case he should be attacking downfield more. That has been a historical Jared Goff weakness, one that he did sort of shore up last year. So for Jared Goff, I think what you want to see is him pressing and attacking more downfield. But the Lions, I think, playing a little more conservative this year, still going for it on 4th down, but allowing more of the David Montgomery kind of plays, the 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of plays, when really the way that this offense really opens up, the way that it has the best fantasy value for Jared Goff and everybody around him, is him to be taking 5 to 8 deep shots a game and getting it downfield. So I think this is one of the spots for Goff where his interests and what would behoove him and the team's interests and then the fantasy football players' interests, none of that aligns together. So Jared Goff, I think I would put him in a slightly better spot than Derek Carr. And I think he's playing a little bit better as well. So Jared Goff goes right here. Not quite average, still playing under average, but I think can be a guy that moves up more here. And if he attacks downfield, I think he could move into this Purdy range. It's just, you got to see this offense change a little bit more and get a little better for him. Jimmy Garoppolo, we can also talk about Aiden O'Connell briefly. Aiden O'Connell did not show much in his one start. Negative 0.3 EPA per pass, negative 0.3 EPA per dropback, negative 4 EPA when getting pressured. So he got pressured 11 times in that game. It did not go well for him. Didn't get it downfield either, just one deep shot compared to 2.8 per game. Compared to 3 per game for Jimmy Garoppolo. So Jimmy, let's talk about him. Negative 0.05 EPA per pass, negative 0.04 EPA per dropback, negative 0.7 EPA when getting pressured. All the people that are calling for Jimmy G's head, all the people that want to see Aiden O'Connell go, he's not there yet. He's not ready for prime time. That matchup against the Chargers was probably a lot better one than the Raiders will see throughout the course of the year. So Jimmy Garoppolo, I think the spot getting worse, the player getting less efficient. We'll see if he gets back. I would assume he plays this week off concussion protocol. But Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, goes worst version of Jared Goff. You can make the case he's kind of in the same spot as Derek Carr. I'm gonna make it here so everybody can see the screen and I'm not immediately overlapping, guys. But I think he's kind of similar to Derek Carr, where if he just plays okay, just feeds Devontae Adams, just gets his targets to Jacoby Myers, like he's gonna have good days. Josh Jacobs opens things up, maybe gets some checkdowns that could turn into touchdowns. Jimmy G's situation is good. He's just not creating a lot of value for it, and I think the pressure's getting to him. The injuries are getting to him. Definitely something where he is a risk point just because of the fact that the Raiders are running the wrong way, and you could see Devontae Adams just haul for a trade. Fucking love this shit. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know this is a weird piece of content, guys. I know just doing a stream for 2.5 hours and giving just a bunch of numbers, railing them off one after the other here can be a little bit tough, but this is what the process looks like for me. This has been really helpful for my process to kind of land where I should with guys rather than just taking my player takes. So that's something that hopefully you guys get some use out of it. Joe Burrow looking bad. Negative 0.24 EPA per dropback, negative 0.24 EPA per pass, negative 0.5 EPA when getting pressured, negative 0.7 an EPA when he's targeting downfield. Again, Joe Burrow, the lack of mobility, the calf strain. He's only taking 2.5 deep shots per game. He's getting downfield at negative 0.7 EPA. These are really bad things for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is not playing like Joe Burrow right now, and that's a cause for concern. He's also not running, just 2 rushes per game for a negative 0.7 EPA. That was another bit of his toolbox that added a lot of value fantasy-wise, especially over the course of a best ball season. So Joe Burrow right now, if he's not going to run, if he's going to be injured, if T. Higgins is going to be banged up, he's basically just got to get everything through Jamar Chase. Irv Smith also hurt. I think for right now, I think Joe Burrow is kind of in this Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr tier. Just similar weapons. Joe Burrow can still get there if Jamar Chase catches 10 for 150, and then the rest of the guys just give enough numbers to add up there. But he's not Joe Burrow from the past few years, and I don't know that we'll see that Joe Burrow this year. They have a bye coming up, I believe, week 7. So that is something for Burrow that, man, it's got to get better for him at some point. I just don't know how it does if he doesn't get time to heal and get time to improve. So maybe the rubber meets the road this week against the Cardinals. You know, the Cardinals a little bit feisty. He needs to be out for like 3 weeks and get himself up to stuff. I'm not a doctor. It may shock you to hear the guy with the money sign over his shoulder. It's not a doctor. But I think something's got to give for Joe Burrow for him to actually have the value you guys want him to have. Shout out, I am the KY. Ian Thecky? I don't know, but I am the KY. Shout out him. New member here on Splash Play. Of course, when we have a new member here on Splash Play for $4.99 a month, we say, welcome to the family. Welcome to the family. I am the KY. Would love to get you all greased up and wrestle around over a plate of pasta and some meatballs and some gabagool. So please, welcome to the family. I am the KY. Yeah, shouts and appreciate everybody here. The welcome committee in chat. Always good to see that. Welcome to the Squirt Squad. Of course, join the Squirt Squad down below by hitting the join button, $4.99 a month. You also get my data sheet on the weekends. My promise now is I'm going to put it out every Saturday morning, regardless of injuries or schedule. So get that here, hit $4.99. You can see all the data I'm talking about in one beautiful place. All right. Jordan Love, this would be an interesting one. Jordan Love on the year down to a negative 0.05 EPA per pass, down to a flat 0 EPA per dropback. Down to a negative 0.98 EPA when getting pressured. So that actually could be worse for Jordan Love with how bad he looked heading into last week. Again, we did forecast on this very video last week that Jordan Love, the second that he saw pressure, shit was going to go bad. Shit went bad on Thursday Night Football. But I do think that he acquitted himself a little better than it might seem analytically. 4.5 deep shots per game for him at a 0.05 EPA. Do expect that to go up. He's not been great getting these deep shots, a 6% interception rate when he is throwing downfield, but he is still definitely getting the opportunity to throw it deep, and that's what we're looking for the opportunity. He's also rushing 4 times a game, so he's not quite in this here. I think he's right now a better Deshaun Watson. maybe a 1-to-1. That might be unfair to Jordan Love, but I think Jordan Love's had some tough matchups too. So I think Jordan Love, to me, he's coming the wrong way. He was up here last week. We're now pushing him down here. That's not great. That's got to happen after as bad as he looked on Thursday Night Football. But I really feel like for Jordan Love that there's going to be spike weeks. I mean, the fact that he has not had a game that was meaningfully less than 20 fantasy points so far, like that game on Thursday was so fucking bad. Like I can't tell you how bad it was. I was driving back from my wife was driving because I drove going, she drove coming back from my grandmother's wake. And I was watching the game on my phone, like, what the fuck is going on with Jordan Love? Of course, deeply invested in him from hand-built lineups that I did because I'm a sicko. If you want to know the level of sicko. Point being, though, that looked as bad as it could possibly look, and he's still holding in and still putting up 20 fantasy points. So I think you got to feel pretty good about Jordan Love, and I do expect when Christian Watson's running a full complement of routes, when Aaron Jones is out there fully, Jordan Love's going to have better games. So I think, to me, I would bet on him moving up here more than I would Deshaun Watson right now, which might be a hot take. Josh Allen. Where's old Josh? Love a good Josh Allen. 0.17 EPA per pass, 0.2 EPA per dropback, 11 pressured plays per game, and he's getting a 0 EPA flat. So he's not taking anything off the table when he's getting pressured. And he, in fact, has a 9% touchdown rate, but also 2.3% interception rate. So that's not the best thing you want to see. 3 deep shots per game, not opening it up downfield quite as much. Also still not running as much as he did last year, just 4 rushes per game. So, Josh Allen kind of looks to me like a better version of Jordan Love right now, just because he's not getting the 10 rushes per game. He's not in this Hurts, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones tier as a rusher. They're trying to keep him safe. That said, we do know the upside's pretty good. Maybe we push him a little bit more this way because the talent's going to be a little bit better. Yeah, I think Josh Allen, I would put him as a more running version of Brock Purdy, but just having Diggs there as a vessel, having Gabe Davis as a vessel, having, even what James Cook's been doing in the check down game, the tight ends we know pretty well. With Kincaid, we love. Dawson Knox still out there doing a pretty good job. So Josh Allen, I think he's not elite enough right now as a rusher. And that's the part that would scare me if you invested heavily in him. And games that really matter, I have to imagine he's going to run closer to 10 times a game. But just fantasy-wise, like you want to see him averaging, 8 to 10. And these guys are averaging 8 to 10. So Josh Allen's just not that guy anymore, whether it be age, just trying to keep him healthy. But definitely not good usage overall in the run game for Josh Allen. Justin Fields. Actually, let's rank Josh Dobbs real fast. So we'll use Kyler Murray as the proxy again. Josh Dobbs deserves a lot of fucking credit for how he's playing. 0.01 EPA per pass, 0.04 EPA per dropback, negative 0.06 EPA when getting pressured. So he's just not letting pressure affect him that much, which is shocking given that it's Josh Dobbs. 3 deep shots per game, good for a 0.5 EPA. No touchdowns or picks, and 6 runs per game. So in the running department, Josh Dobbs is actually getting a little bit more work than Josh Allen and Jordan Love and Deshaun Watson. So I think that with how he's playing and the usage, I think Kyler Murray as Josh Dobbs goes right in between here. I do expect Kyler Murray to start at some point. I don't know if Kyler's going to be as good as Josh Dobbs is. I guess, the usage should be similar. So that bodes well for Kyler Murray for whatever amount of games he plays. But man, it really does seem pretty interesting. Sir Dobbs is Mr. Underappreciated this season. What a dude. He's playing really well. It is shocking to see those numbers and see it spelled out like that. But the usage is there. 6 rushes, 4 deep shots. Like if you have, 10 or more combined deep throws plus rush attempts, that's the kind of QB I want to get behind. So I do think Dobbs, for as long as he's going to start live as a GPP player, probably would have been nice to have in best ball, though I guess it falls apart if he does hit the bench come week 17. But Dobbs looking good. So can't argue with Dobbs. Again, Kyler Murray representing Dobbs here on the screen. Justin Fields, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, negative 0.26 EPA per dropback, negative 0.9 EPA when getting pressured. That's not that great. He's not turning it over, though, and getting pressured. Just a 1.6% interception rate, so that's good. 4.3 deep shots per game, good for a 0.44 EPA, and a 24% touchdown rate. This is actually interesting. So when he's getting deep shots, he's either throwing a touchdown 24% of the time or he's getting sacked 24% of the time. So those are boom bust plays. That said, I believe analytically, you do kind of want boom bust plays. Like you want guys to get an opportunity to either fail and fail within a spectrum of things that are manageable, or to just get a deep shot and get a touchdown. So things can run better for Justin Fields if they lean into the strengths. And he's running 7 times a game. I know we'd like to see more, but he basically is right now playing like a worse version of Josh Dobbs with a slightly better role. So I think Fields is here. We saw the passing upside last week. I think that's going to be there for the most part, as long as they are willing to attack and get downfield. Hard to expect the same efficacy just because he's not going to face Denver every week, but Fields is in a pretty good spot. Like, this could be worse. And I still think he is a guy. I don't expect him to make a rise here to Allen tier, but he could make a rise left to right here and get closer to AR, get closer to Daniel Jones, maybe even get closer to Jalen Hurts. So I don't think it's a bad spot for Justin Fields. And I know people out there were like, oh, before last week, should I cut him? It's like, no, don't fucking cut Justin Fields. You took him with high draft capital. Ride it out because things are going to get better soon. And I think they are going to get better soon. Justin Herbert. 0.12 EPA per pass, 0.11 EPA per dropback, negative 0.4 EPA when getting pressured with a 6% touchdown rate and a 2% pick rate. That's fine. Now taking 5 deep shots per game at a 0.37 EPA per dropback there. That looks fine. 5% touchdown. He's not getting a lot of success downfield on the deep shots, though, which is kind of surprising. That can run better for him. So you can make the case that Justin Herbert might be due for positive regression. 5 rushes per game is up for him too. I had lamented earlier in the year that he was not getting the same rushing upside as Dak got last year in the same Kellen Moore offense. But Justin Herbert, I think, playing a little better. I think similar situation to Josh Allen, but he is running more than Allen. So I'm going to say that Justin Herbert, slightly better spot than Allen, but not playing quite as well would be the way that I'd go with that. Love the marathon sessions. Hope I don't end up 12th in the Jerry draft. Have to leave in shame. Oh, no. I didn't know that you were in the Jerry draft, but glad to have you in here. I am the KY. I appreciate it. So James's rankings here. Herbert number 1, Fields number 2, Mac Jones boy, James's rankings leave something to be desired here. Leave it to the SPAGS ranking pros. That's what we try to do here. Kenny Pickett may be out this week. We will see. He has not played so well on the year, though. Negative 0.3 EPA per pass, negative 0.26 EPA per dropback, negative 0.5 EPA when getting pressured. That's actually gotten worse over the last week. Hasn't thrown a pick when getting pressured, though. That's good. Taking 1.8 deep shots per game, though, with a negative 1.1 EPA is so fucking bad. It's frustrating. I don't know if you guys saw on social media. Apparently, Matt Canada might have a burner on Twitter defending himself from all the slander out there. He deserves the goddamn slander because you know what was a positive deep throwing player in college? Kenny Pickett was a positive deep throwing player in college. That's why he got drafted, was because of how good he was feeding Jordan Addison that one year. So Kenny Pickett, to me, is just being misused. That said, this is terrible. Like, it looks really bad. I think right now he is playing worse than Bryce Young. He's running a little bit better than Bryce, like rushing a little better than Bryce, 2.5 rushes per game, good for a 0.4 EPA. But Kenny Pickett, man, this is a bad run out for Pickett. He feels like a benching candidate. I don't think they can bench him. Too much draft capital invested, but it would not shock me if Pickens has his best game sans Deontay Johnson if Trubisky's at QB. Trubisky was actually pretty efficient last year and pretty good. He kind of got benched just because Pickett was playing well enough, and I think Trubisky had gotten hurt in one of those games. So that's why Pickett ended up starting. I think I would not be surprised to see there just be better results with Trubisky at QB. I think Pickett needs the week off, and I believe their bye is the week after. He needs his time off to like recalibrate and something. And frankly, like, whoever is calling the plays, whoever is forcing them to not throw the ball downfield is fucking crippling this team, is how I feel about it. Because that's what you can do with Pickens. He's the poor man's Randy Moss, the homeless man's Randy Moss. He can make plays downfield, and they're just not giving him the shots. And that's never going to work out for the QB. Kirk Cousins, another mediocre week here. He is down to a negative 0.1 EPA per pass, negative 0.12 EPA per dropback, negative 0.8 EPA when getting pressured. So he is getting a lot worse there. Still an 8% touchdown rate when getting pressured compared to a 2% interception rate, but definitely not that good overall. 3.5 deep shots per game, good for a 0.8 EPA. Yeah, Kirk is coming down. Kirk looked really good to start the year, but he doesn't run. The efficiency metrics are looking worse by the week. Kirk's still live potentially to get traded. Kirk's still live at some point if he does stay on the Vikings to get benched, just because of the fact that they may realize they're going to be more benefited by tanking. So Kirk, I think, has to go. Oh, man. I think he is now in this Jimmy Jared Goff tier where the offense can still drive him to big days, but he's not going to run. Everything that he's going to get has to come from an outlier day for Jefferson plus an outlier day for Addison or Hawkinson. It's not great for Kirk. I do not love what I'm seeing from Kirk so far. And it sucks. He started the year so hot, but we are running pretty bad for him right now. I do expect him to get closer for what it's worth. I expect him to get closer to here maybe. But for right now, I don't think he's in a better situation than Jared Goff or Jimmy G meaningfully. Lamar should be looking on the upswing here. No, still a negative 0.03 EPA per pass, up to a 0.01 EPA per drop back as he is having some success running the ball. Negative 1.2 EPA on pressured plays. So again, when there is a day where it's not Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the other side and the defense is actually getting pressure, I do think Lamar is going to have one real bad stinker. We'll see what that day is, but it's not here yet, obviously. 2.5 deep shots per game, so the usage downfield is not great for Lamar, but he is running 10 times a game, 10.3 actually, good for a 0.13 EPA per rush. So Lamar, one of the best spots still. Would like to see him get the ball downfield more. That is going to keep me from giving him the full Jalen Hurts. Hurts takes 5 deep shots per game, runs 10 times. Lamar takes 2-ish deep shots per game, runs 10 times. That's enough the difference here to say that that Jalen Hurts is in a better spot. But Lamar is playing pretty okay. I think you would like to see him play better, but obviously fantasy-wise, that matters a bit less. Mac Jones. Down to 40 dropbacks per game with his benching last game, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, negative 0.24 EPA per dropback, 66% on target rates, not that good either. He's doing okay under pressure with a negative 0.5 EPA, 3.8% touchdown rate with no picks, but that's not going to be enough to save his job. 4.8 deep shots per game is terrible on him. He's only completed 0.8 of those nearly 5 deep shots per game, good for a negative 0.3 EPA. And 3.5 rushes per game. So okay rushing usage, but you factor in the fact that he might get benched, like Bailey Zappi coming in. We know they had a little bit of a hard-on for Bailey Zappi last year. I think Mac Jones, to me, goes in this tier of guys, but playing a little bit worse. And he honestly doesn't have as good of a target either. So you could make the case that spot-wise, he probably goes, he's probably like Desmond Ridder, I think. Doesn't have the weapons of a Joe Burrow, a Derek Carr, a Jimmy G, a Kirk, a Jared Goff. He's going to get dropbacks, but it really feels like Mac Jones' time as starting QB could be ending. I know we talked about D. Owens here saying that Pickett feels like a benching candidate. I think Mac Jones is a much more live benching candidate just because of the fact that they haven't really liked him, and now we are seeing the run bad hit pretty hard. But he probably gets 1-2 more starts before they go that way, so we'll see if he can salvage. Matthew Stafford, 0.04 EPA per pass, 60. Wow. Only a 65% on target rate for Matthew Stafford. It's kind of surprising given how this offense is run, but definitely not as good as I would have thought for Matthew Stafford. 0.06 EPA per dropback, though, so he actually is running pretty well when he does run the ball. Negative 0.4 EPA when getting pressured. That's fine. 4.3 deep shots per game, 2.5 rushes, good for a 0.4 EPA. It's an okay spot for Stafford. Things will obviously get a little more effective for him, a little bit worse for Puka when Cooper Kupp comes back in, potentially this week, though. Some concerns about Cooper Kupp's hamstring. Apparently, he's barely 80% healthy, if that is the case, and they want him to be 80 to 90% healthy, ready to go. So Stafford, for right now, I think a better version of these guys is how I'd feel about it, but maybe not quite as good. Is he in a better spot than Stroud? I think you have to give him a better spot than Stroud, but I think he and Stroud to me feel like kind of one-to-one comparisons. Not that great overall for Stafford so far, but yeah, that's interesting. I think that Stafford's one of these guys where it wouldn't shock me if he runs bad and heads more this way. And I guess it wouldn't shock me if Kupp comes back in, this offense keeps overachieving. We see Stafford a little bit more in this tier, but the lack of rushing upside overall, he's just never going to get that volume. And frankly, you watch him get hit. He's got a hip contusion right now. You watch him get hit, and every time it's like, oh, is this the one where he's just out? And I think that is coming at some point. Just, it's not great. All right. Let's see what we're going with here. Patrick Mahomes up next. Mahomes, 0.07 EPA per pass, 0.14 EPA per dropback, just making lemonade out of lemons every single time. Negative 0.01 EPA when getting pressured. That is a very good number for Mahomes, especially given that he's getting pressured 15 times a game, which is not good. It's taking 4 deep shots per game, which should be more, honestly, with Patrick Mahomes. 0.4 EPA on those. And he's running 5.8 times per game, so running a lot more than you would think for a Patrick Mahomes. I think right now he is in this tier of Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. Man, it does feel right like his ceiling is not quite Josh Allen's ceiling right now, just because it doesn't have the alpha pass catchers there besides Travis Kelce, and clearly Kadarius Toney's not paid out. None of the young guys, Rashee Rice not getting enough usage. I think Mahomes will put him here. I think he's right now in a less good situation than Justin Herbert, just because Herbert can run a couple times and then have a big day just for Keenan Allen. Whereas Mahomes, it feels like he has to really feed a bunch of different dudes. And he's not running for like 50-yard runs. He's running for chunk plays that are a little more efficient than they might seem. So Mahomes, I think, can go right there, and I don't feel that bad about it. Russell Wilson coming up next. Negative 0.07 EPA per pass, 0 flat EPA per dropback, because he actually is running pretty well when he does that. Negative 0.55 EPA when getting pressured, with a 5% touchdown rate and a 2% pick rate. 4 deep shots per game, 4.3 to be specific, at a 0.6 EPA. So he is getting the ball downfield, 12% touchdown rate when getting the ball downfield as well. And he's running 3 times a game. He's not playing great, but he's running enough. I think slightly better Deshaun Watson, but not as good of a spot would be where I'd put Russ. It feels like, the New Orleans offense, really tough for the New Orleans offense, it's in Denver now, excuse me. The approach by Sean Payton, not the best one for fantasy, because I think it was like 9 different guys that got targeted last week. And then they're also bringing up Traquan Smith, another favorite toy from Sean Payton's previous regime. So that can bode well for Russ. It doesn't bode well for the stacking with him. It doesn't bode well for how we approach things fantasy wise. So this might be a little bit overrating Russ, but I will put him here because he's actually playing a little better than it would seem given how awful Denver has been. Ryan Tannehill, this is going to be not great. Negative 0.2 EPA per pass, negative 0.16 EPA per dropback, negative 1.4 EPA when getting pressured. So another guy I would highlight gets pressure matchups. Tannehill at some point is going to have a complete meltdown. We are just not there yet. He's not only completing 33% of his passes when getting pressured. That is one of the worst marks in the league. 4.8 deep shots per game for Tannehill, which is surprising. They are trying to get the ball downfield, but just a 0.14 EPA on those. And he's running 2.5 times a game. Not that good, with a negative 0.3 EPA on those plays. The deep shots are actually pretty okay. He's just not good. So I think we put him like here. He's not running enough. He and Joe Burrow should not be this close, but I do think fundamentally he is pretty close there. So that definitely would be worrisome if I were a Burrow fan. And maybe Tannehill is another guy where at a certain point they have to see what Malik Willis / Will Levis have. The spot is not quite as in danger as like a Mac Jones or Desmond Ridder, but Tannehill is just a guy that I can't imagine. It would be crazy to see him playing in week 17, I think, at this point. Just how he's playing and all that. Sam Howell. Let's go over to him. He is at a negative 0.24 EPA per pass, negative 0.15 EPA per dropback, with a negative 1.2 EPA when getting pressured, 1.4% touchdown rate on those plays, 6% interception rate on those plays. Only 2.5 deep shots per game, which is the best part of Sam Howell. It was in college. It is still now. A 0.8 EPA when he's throwing downfield, and a 10% touchdown rate when he's throwing downfield. Let Sam Howell cook. I know that sounds crazy, but if you let Sam Howell actually get the ball downfield, it's going to be better for fantasy. It's going to be better for him. All of that, I think, bodes pretty well. I don't think it's percent time now. Howell actually kept them competitive in a game against the Eagles. That probably bought him some time. He's not great. He's definitely not great, but I think the spot is still a little better than Ridder, still a little better than Mac Jones. And honestly, he's not quite Joe Burrow. If he had 5 deep shots per game, I would be tempted to say his spot is better than Joe Burrow. But I think right now he's playing about as bad as Joe Burrow, and the spot's a little better than Ridder and Jones. So I'm going to put Sam Howell right there. Some signs of life from Sam Howell, though. I think that if I had to put a wager on it, I would rank my benching candidates as Mac Jones number 1, Ridder number 2, Howell number 3, because I think that they're even more committed to Howell, just around the language around him and all that. And also the fact that they just need to play into his strengths more. D'Amico Ryans, I saw our pal Sam Hoppin, tweeting about an interview with D'Amico Ryan and talking about how, you have certain offenses and you want to do these things, but then you also are willing to change it because you want to get your guys in the best position of success with the roster you have. Sam Howell's not being used successfully for himself. He should be running more. He should be throwing downfield more. If they do that, the spot gets a lot better for him, and I think his performance gets better too. Mac is the worst. Yes, let's go for a record 6 hours. I do not. I have a meeting at 2. That's always going to be the cutoff point. but yes, we will not ever subject you guys to that much. Trevor Lawrence, everybody's the belle of the ball in the offseason for a lot of folks out there, continues to look like dog shit. Negative 0.16 EPA per pass, negative 0.18 EPA per dropback. He is a mobile QB, a guy who can run, and yet he is worse when he's actually getting an opportunity to run. That's not a good sign. Still a negative 0.96 EPA per pressure play, a 3.8% touchdown rate, and a 3.8% pick rate. So basically, he is throwing a touchdown when he's pressured as often as he is getting picked off. 3.3 deep shots per game, good for a 0.8 EPA. Another guy that should be pressing more downfield, but is not. 15% touchdown rate when he is throwing it downfield, but he's running 6 times a game. So the spot for Trevor Lawrence is not that bad. He's just playing poorly. He is playing incredibly poorly. And the Trevor Lawrence fan in your life needs to be slapped a little to be reminded of this, because Trevor Lawrence is underperforming everything greatly. I think because of the spot and the usage, I will put him slightly ahead of Deshaun. I do think there'll be positive regression coming for Trevor Lawrence at some point, but we are now 4 weeks in, and he has shown not nearly as much as you would want to see. Obviously, Sunday morning, I think another Sunday morning game for him. Maybe that's going to be a good thing for him, given that he did play well last week, playing on Sunday morning in London. But Trevor Lawrence, I think, needs some bounce back games to get anywhere up here. But the usage is good enough that if he does have positive regression, if he plays well for 4 out of 6 weeks, 6 out of 8 weeks, he could move up here pretty easily. So that looks pretty good. Meetings where people mouth fart at each other and nothing gets done. No, we have daily meetings for probably that are pretty productive, but it's all what you put into them. I definitely think that meetings are always useless for the most part. Like tomorrow I actually have a lot of important meetings because we got to get some money going for Probably. Speaking of, quickly, just a quick pander here. Go to probably.com, getting some good free bets there. Of course, the data on Probably is going to be free forever. You can scroll through in perpetuity, find the best mathematically profitable bets, but go check it out. And I'm actually going to show you guys something I'm very proud of at the end of this video. Did make a little video teaser / tutorial for Probably. So I was up on Canva until 1 a.m. last night. So we'll hit that at the end of the video. All right, let's keep it moving here. Tua Tagovailoa, 0.32 EPA per pass, 0.24 EPA per dropback, negative 0.07 EPA when getting pressured. So he is now in the negatives when getting pressured. That was the Buffalo game, was finally the thing to knock him back to the other side. But he has looked pretty good on the year when getting pressured before that. He's not thrown a touchdown when getting pressured yet, but does have a 2% interception rate, 2.4%. Has taken 5 deep shots per game, good for a 0.5 EPA, and only 2.8 rushes per game. So Tua, I think, still analytically the best passer, the best QB in football. The spot, though, I think has to come down a little bit because he's not rushing, and now we have seen some of the weaknesses that are there in the Miami offense if things are not running hot for him. Tua, maybe a little bit of a front runner player, just because he has to be in certain game scripts where they can really rack it up early and then kind of continue to beat down and weather the defense as they go. But Tua still, I think, technically would be the apex predator, but I'd rather have the usage for Jalen Hurts like 10 times out of 10. So that'd be the best way to look at that. And then we have Trey Lance and Will Levis. Not going to rank those guys. Whew. QBs. We did it in 47 minutes. Which I think is basically pace. But yeah, I guess Tua would be the apex predator in terms of quality passing. Jalen Hurts would be the apex predator in terms of the spot. So keep that in mind here. Of course, we always try to identify the apex predator at every position as we go. On to the running backs. Before we do, though, please subscribe down below. Please hit the like button. Please leave a comment. Of course, Splash Play still on that march to 3K subs. And God damn it, can we fucking hit it before 2024? That's the hope. So please subscribe down below. Please hit the like button. Of course, we'll always put my full ass in everything we do here prep-wise throughout the week. Splash Play 5 days a week, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. So come hang out with me here. If you know ball and if you love ball, oh, here's me both knowing and loving ball. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Love you, ball. I know you so well. Mwah. There we go. Where else are you going to find a man? Scott Hansen doesn't kiss his football. Let's go to the running backs. Aaron Jones going to be number 1 here. 0.14 EPA per rush, 0.72 EPA per pass. Much to the Packers fans' consternation, was not used in any of those facets very well on Thursday Night Football in his return. But obviously coming off the hamstring strain, Aaron Jones, the history of hamstring strains, does make sense there. He's great analytically. Still, once again, though, struggles with the overall volume. He's at 7 rushes per game, 3 targets per game. It's actually less than A.J. Dillon now. Obviously missed the one game, too, where Dillon got more of the workload. But the lack of usage here is not great, but he is analytically probably one of the best running backs in football right now. that wouldn't hold up the same way if he were getting 20 touches a game. The fact that he's not getting 20 touches a game just feels like a disservice. A.J. Dillon, pot fucking stinks. A.J. Dillon's not very good, but we'll talk about him now. A.J. Dillon, negative 0.17 EPA per rush, 0.12 EPA per pass. So again, same offensive environment, and Aaron Jones is substantially better in it. We are seeing 12.3 intended touches per game for A.J. Dillon. So he is basically the flip side here. I guess the pass game work being okay, I could put him closer to average, but A.J. Dillon, to me, like, these guys are just killing each other. And this has been always the case in Green Bay. But now without Aaron Rodgers there, the offense, more touches, more rushes, more opportunities flowing Jordan Love's way. And then Jordan Love's just not checking down the same way. He's not using these guys as vessels. And for some reason, they're not using Aaron Jones as a way to get pressure off of Jordan Love yet. I hope at some point they fucking figure that out, but it's not the case yet. So I think these guys right now, the spot is not great, but they're both above 10 touches a game. So inherently, they should be better than this middle line here of averageness. Madison. See what old Alex is doing here. 18.5 intended touches per game. Some riskier Cam Akers in the mix, though the Cam Akers thing did seem to hurt the Ty Chandler part of the equation more so. He's getting 2.5 red zone rushes per game, 1.3 red zone targets per game, getting work inside the 5-yard line. This role for Madison's not bad. Still think he has some risk. Still think he's not that good with a negative 0.07 EPA per rush, negative 0.3 EPA per pass. So he is closer to a mid/not good player. But the spot, anytime you're going to be hovering around 20 touches, is pretty good. So Madison goes here. I think A.J. Dillon's a little better than him, but Madison more volume, so that is why he falls where he does. A-Chain and D Swift, semi-apex CMC, the apex predator. We'll find out. Find out if he's as efficient as he should be. Alvin Kamara returned to football this past week. Good for a negative 0.1 EPA per rush, negative 0.2 EPA per pass. So got a ton of work, 25 intended touches, 11 which were rushes, 14 of which were targets. He caught 13 of them with a negative 1.5 ADOT on those. So basically just checkdowns behind the line of scrimmage for a guy in Derek Carr who cannot throw. Did get 2 red zone targets, did nothing with them. This is tremendous usage for Kamara. He's not good with it, but 25 opportunities a game is a fucking lot. So Alvin Kamara, for right now, one of the best spots in the league, especially for full point PPR on DraftKings. He can be a murderer the longer this keeps up. But if he's just inefficient, they got to give something to Kendra at some point. So that's the thing that I would watch out for. Antonio Gibson, the man we can always reliably rank all the way down here. Negative 0.46 EPA per rush, negative 0.7 EPA per pass. The pass game back, the new Jerick McKinnon, the new fucking, what's his face? JD McKissick. He is not any of those things. He is playing terribly. 5.8 intended touches per game. So that's bad too. Antonio Gibson, worst running back in football in terms of usage and opportunity. 0.8 red zone rushes per game, which basically means I think he got like 1 or 2. This usage is awful. He's not good. Antonio Gibson, cut him in your leagues if you're doing season long stuff. Austin Eckler going to be out again this week with the Chargers on bye, but he has a 0.34 EPA per rush, 0.28 EPA per pass, 21 intended touches per game, 5 red zone rushes per game, 4 of which are inside the 5-yard line, 1 red zone target per game. Elite usage for Austin Eckler, elite player. He deserves to go right here. The one question you have is he going to continue to get this work coming off the injury? And the fact that clearly contract stuff, I think, is maybe not entirely not a factor in terms of him not playing recently. But Eckler, I think, in this spot, still as close as you can get to McCaffrey without being McCaffrey. But the injury stuff, like, it doesn't behoove him to force himself out there. If there is any nick, any cut, any issue at all with him, he probably won't play. So just keep that in mind with Eckler, but still hard to argue his role and what he's been doing. Bijan up next. Bijan, 0.09 EPA per rush, 0.2 EPA per pass. So he's basically what I said he would be in a worst case scenario. Last year's Tyler Algier. Bijan's that, but with a little more pass game work. 18.8 intended touches per game, 13.3 of which are a run. Then 5.5 of those are going to be targets. He's getting 1.3 red zone rushes per game. That hurts the roll. 0.8 red zone targets per game. That also hurts the roll. The roll is not quite as good as Kamara, not quite as good as Eckler, but still very good. He needs more red zone work. Algier is taking the red zone work. So that is a big hurt for him. If Algier gets hurt at some point, then maybe Bijan can actually be in this Eckler tier, this McCaffrey, where we're going to put him eventually tier. For right now, though, he's just really good. He's really good. Hard to argue with what he's doing, especially in a really bad offensive environment. So good job by Bijan, but could be better. Breece Hall, 0.01 EPA per rush, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, and 10.5 intended touches per game. Not good for Breece. 13% avoided tackle rate. That's also substantially down for him too. So he's not controlling the part he can control either. So that's not good for Breece either. 0.3 red zone rushes per game. Also not great for Breece. I think Breece is still basically a little better than average. The spot though, 10 touches per game. Let's put him right here. I think he's in like an average running back spot, a committee back who's not getting guaranteed red zone work, and he's not breaking anything huge. I know we have a lot of Breece fans in the community. I know there's a lot out there, a lot of sharp people. Pat Kerrane, of course, I think defends Breece on Twitter more than anybody. So there's a lot of people out there that think that better days will come for Breece. I don't know how it happens in this offense. I don't know how it happens with Dalvin Cook still getting work. I don't know how it happens with Zach Wilson. I have a lot of questions about how this can get better for Breece. And that has been my concern all offseason. And I think it was a little bit assuaged by the idea of them being a top Super Bowl odds team with Aaron Rodgers. Now they are not that. And I think that with Breece, I just don't know that the run good actually comes through. It absolutely can. But I don't know that I have any confidence level. And I personally would not want to bet on it. Brian Robinson, negative 0.02 EPA per rush, 0.32 EPA per pass, 17 intended touches per game, includes 3 inside the red zone, 1.3 per game inside the 5-yard line, 0.5 red zone targets per game as well. And he's actually avoiding tackles. 20% avoided tackle rate for Brian Robinson is a surprise when you watch him play and he just kind of does whatever. All right, so Brian Robinson, the workload, and he's better than Madison. I think Brian Robinson and Bijan Robinson closer than you would think. Brian should be a little bit lower, but he's better than average, and the workload's pretty good. So Brian Robinson, I think, pretty live. News just broke that Saleh said no more limit for Breece. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe when I see it, and I'll believe the efficacy when I see it too. Like I know, like I think people, and I was too, where I saw the big runs against Buffalo in week 1. I was like, man, this guy's back. This guy's better than ever. I think there's a difference between breaking a couple big plays here and there and having a functional role week to week as part of a good offense. And I don't think Breece can solve that second part by himself. So that's really the big thing for him. It's not on him. Like I think he can still break 90-yard touchdowns. He did that last year, and the offensive environment wasn't much better. But I think that's sort of the risk with Breece, is that the offense as a whole is just kind of a slog. Cam Akers, we don't need to do anything with Cam Akers. The role's not that great. I don't have his usage isolated here. Didn't get a ton of work behind Madison. So for Cam, he's inefficient on the year as well. Negative 0.12 EPA per rush, 0.1 EPA per pass. I think he's like, this is going to be an affront to people. I think he's like close to Breece Hall range. The usage is kind of committee back-ish. Maybe some more upside for Breece, obviously, but Cam, I think, probably needs them to completely lose faith in Madison. We need to see more Madison fumbles if you want Cam Akers to get there. But for right now, Cam, it's just like he doesn't do anything that different from Madison, and he's not been better yet. So he needs to win that job somehow, and I don't know how he does. Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, McCaffrey looks great. 0.1 EPA per rush, 0.46 EPA per pass, 25.3 intended touches per game. That includes 19.5 routes per game, 20 rushes, 5.3 targets, 5.5 red zone rushes, 1.3 inside the 5-yard line per game, 1 red zone target per game. I mean, McCaffrey, I know. If only Big Lenny had told us about CMC before the season. Wonder if he also thinks Justin Jefferson is pretty good. Yes, Big Lenny and I made amends, but he did really call me a bozo many times for not going with the chalk option of Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, though, is your apex predator. Hard to argue with it. He's playing out of his mind. I still will vocalize the concerns, and part of the thesis here that I mentioned yesterday is that, A, you take a running back with the top 3 picks, you're with a very chalky configuration. A lot of people have a hard time passing up Christian McCaffrey. That's why I don't take him. But also, the accumulation of work for him is going to add up. It is going to be a problem for him as the year goes on if he keeps getting 25 intended touches a game. At the end of that game against the Cardinals, injured neck on the sideline. The team is trying to loosen him up. They're looking really concerned. That's going to be the case for a lot of these games, as long as the Niners have to keep trotting him out there. So Eli Mitchell coming back in, I think, would be a better sign for McCaffrey's efficiency, even though the usage would theoretically come down a little bit if Mitchell looks like himself last year, which he is not so far this season. But for right now, McCaffrey, I think, has to be your apex predator, has to be the top guy, but definitely it. Bozo is such an A+. I don't think so. I don't enjoy Bozo. I mean, like a great clown. If we're talking about, Bozo dubs and I think you should leave, then yes, I think a great one to go to. But no, it's just like if you don't get why someone like me who extols wide receivers, and again, channel's called Splash Play. And you don't get why I wouldn't take McCaffrey #1 overall. Then I just don't think you get football in the way that I approach things. But that's fine. We made our peace, so we'll move on with Big Lenny. I won't be a big Mino to him either anymore. Dalvin Cook, trashio, -0.4 EPA per rush, -0.04 EPA per pass, but still getting 9.5 intended touches per game, 1.5 which are a red zone rush, 0.3 inside the 5-yard line. Dalvin Cook. Dalvin is actually, is this correct? So all the people, Breece Hall's got so much juice. Breece Hall's so great. Right now, Dalvin Cook is a 13.3 avoided tackle rate. Breece Hall's a 12.5 avoided tackle rate. I'm just saying the numbers, guys. I know it's going to piss somebody off. That said, I still think that he is a worse version, even EPA-wise, than Breece. So slightly worse spot than Breece, slightly worse player than Breece. He goes, honestly, is he worse than Cam? I think he's worse than Cam. Dalvin Cook goes there. Jerry, where's Jerry now? Where's Jerry? Where's Jerry talking about Dalvin Cook? Of course, for all of our friends who missed the offseason of doing so many drafts, there was once a man in the chat named Jerry who stand for Dalvin Cook harder than anybody. And now Dalvin, where's Dalvin now? Where's Dalvin is a at the very least a 1-to-1 version of Breece Hall, and more likely a much worse version of Breece Hall. Dameon Pierce, up to 18.8 intended touches per game, -0.25 EPA per rush, -0.16 EPA per pass. He has got to turn that shit around. His avoided tackle rate is also about half of what it was last year. Last year was a 33% avoided tackle rate guy. This year, 14%. So Dameon Pierce is not doing what he can control the situation either. He is getting 2.8 red zone rushes per game, 0.8 inside the 5-yard line. Pretty good work, but he is basically Alexander Madison. So Dameon Pierce, Alexander Madison, not what you want to hear. Everybody who was caping for Dameon Pierce and the rise that he would have this year. I'm sorry, Tyler. I know you're one of the guys, and I think of you when I'm talking about Priest too. I just, he's not doing it for me yet. He's not doing it for me, but I get it. I know people want Priest to do well, and I hope he does too. He's on my best drafters team, so I hope he does well, but he's not doing it yet. Damian Harris, 0.12 EPA per rush, 0.45 EPA per pass, but getting 5 touches per game. That is mostly useless, though this is fucking bizarre. 1.5 of Damian Harris's 5 touches per game are red zone carries, 0.8 of which are inside the 5-yard line. So the usage is a little better than it should be for a 5-touch guy, but he's a 5-touch guy. So he goes like right here. Honestly, you make the case that he goes like here, but we'll say with the red zone work, he goes about here. If Latavius Murray weren't in the picture, I do think Damian Harris would look a little better and probably be closer to a 10-touch back, getting the high value work. But yeah, here we go. Ross, we call him Breeze's Christ in Jetland. I know. Again, so many Breeze fans. I get it, but that's what I'm here for. Sometimes I have to be the reality check, or at least the contrarian voice. And I think it's worked out for some guys. It's not worked for others. DeAndre Swift, arguably the best running back per football, getting a lot of carries, 0.22 EPA per rush, 17.5 intended touches. He's not great catching the ball, though. -0.6 EPA on those plays. Only getting targeted 2.8 times per game, so that doesn't matter. 3 red zone rushes per game looks pretty good for DeAndre Swift. 1 inside the 5-yard line per game. No red zone targets to speak of. The role is good. I don't know that it's getting better with Gainwell's involvement. I think right now he is a better version of Brian Robinson. Is that right? I think this feels about right to me. His role is not quite as good as Brian Robinson, which I think is right, because Jalen Hurts takes the red zone, the end zone work away, the easy 1-yard touchdowns away. And then you have Gainwell breathing down his neck. Rashad Penny is there holding pom-poms, waiting for somebody to get hurt. So yeah, Swift I think looks pretty good, but man, it is not. It could be better for Swift. It could be better for Swift on a more logical team. This is not the one for him. Like this is the irony. If DeAndre Swift were playing this role on the Lions, if you're playing the David Montgomery role, DeAndre Swift might be the best back in football. Unfortunately, that is not the run out that he has for himself. David Montgomery, man, for a guy who runs as much as he does and looks as shitty as he does, -0.01 EPA per rush is not that bad. Not even a negative. 0.7 EPA per pass is actually very good, especially for a running back. 24 intended touches per game, 23 of which are rushes, but only 1 target per game, so that's why he's so good. 6.3 red zone rushes per game. We are talking the hallowed ground of Tony Pollard usage, of Christian McCaffrey usage. That is where David Montgomery is. He's also getting 2 inside the 5-yard line, one of the best marks in the league as well. The usage is incredibly elite for David Montgomery. He's playing pretty well. So Montgomery, I think, because it's not pass game volume, like if you were getting 25 targets a game, he would be Alvin Kamara tier in terms of the spot. But I think Montgomery is playing pretty well. And honestly, you can make the case that he should be in between Bijan and Brian Robinson in terms of the talent, taking advantage of his opportunity. And it's a lot of opportunity, man. So David Montgomery, I think, very good spot. Probably the best 0 RB pick overall amidst all those guys. Derrick Henry, negative 0.04 EPA per rush, 0.35 EPA per pass, 20.3 intended touches per game, down to 33 snaps per game. So the workload is still there, but it's not as good. He kind of looks to me a little bit Madison-y, which is not what you want to be if you're Derrick Henry. 2.3 red zone rushes per game, 0.8 inside the 5-yard line. Obviously, the Tennessee offense isn't doing enough to get him in position to do what he does best. He is slightly better Brian Robinson, slightly worse David Montgomery. This is a precipitous fall for Derrick Henry. I know he was being drafted like this, so I guess it's not that bad. And 20 touches per game is still nothing to sniff at. Like, he's going to break some big games here and there, but he had the big game last week because he had the little juke pass thing. That's not something that's going to be there every week. So I think for Henry, yeah, he's basically David Montgomery in a worse offense, which not what you want to see. Achane. Where's Achane at? Holy shit. Achane sold the 0.6 EPA per rush, which, by the way, is impossible. It's EPA for rush plays. You expect to be around 0 at the best case scenario. Some guys could be slightly positive. That wouldn't be a bad thing. 0.6 is like, this guy's getting deep targets kind of usage, but he's running the ball. So that's impossible. Avoiding tackles at a 30% clip, still at only 12.3 intended touches per game, but he's now up to 3 red zone rushes per game, 0.7 inside the 5-yard line, 1.3 red zone targets per game, 0.3 inside the 5-yard line. Man, Achane, he's not going to have the pure volume here, but like, he's right now the best back in football. I don't think we can put him in a better spot than Swift yet because he's not getting 15 to 20 touches. But he's now basically, he led the timeshare with Mostert last week. Jeff Wilson coming back changes the equation a little bit. And I don't expect Achane to be this efficient. It's just so hard. Like, you can't do this as a running back, but he is a perfect storm of really good offense, really smart offensive play caller and coordinator, / schemer and Mike McDaniels. And then he's just a game breaker speed-wise. So I expect him to come back down to earth. But if the usage gets a little better, if he moves more this way and comes down this way, like, that's fine. So he can still be right here. But right now, in terms of just the efficiency metrics, he's the apex predator. Like, he's that dude. Averaging over 11 yards per carry. Like, yeah, I don't look at per carry numbers because they do skew, obviously. And like, a great per carry year would be like 5 or something. But he's avoiding tackles at such a high clip, and he's getting downfield. And I don't know. I think it's got to run bad. It's got to run bad. But he right now is playing like the best running back who's ever existed, which, things regress. Where's CMC at, Spags? I mean, he's not quite as good as Devin Achane or Achane. So you got that. But yes, great volume, Lenny. Again, check on Christian McCaffrey's neck. Let's see how he's doing in a couple weeks. You don't gonna give an aging back who's had a lot of miles on him already 25 touches a game. You know what ends up with that, Lenny? That means the guy ends up fucking completely sabotaging you in the home stretch of the season, especially for a Niners team that just keeps on winning. So victory lap in week 4 all you want, my friend. The truth is coming. The reality is going to hit, and it's not going to feel good. Eli Mitchell. God, Eli Mitchell. He is a guy, though, that you want to talk about compounding an error. McCaffrey's so great. I still don't think he was a guy that made sense for me to take with how I want to build things, where I want to have the best wide receiver room in every draft I do. Taking Eli Mitchell, though, as a lever against McCaffrey, not panning out, especially if he is going to be hurt longer term. We'll see what this knee issue is with him, but negative 0.25 EPA per rush, negative 0.7 EPA per pass, getting 10 intended touches per game. So the usage has been good for Mitchell. He's been terrible. He is right now worse than Dalvin Cook with slightly better usage. Mitchell goes there, but Jesus, that is not good. Please remember that Achane is 4'5" and one big hit from landing on the upper deck. He's not that small, and he's girthy. Like, did he weigh in over 200? I think he was like 190, but I don't know. It's hard to sort of predict how an Achane goes because it's just such a unique situation with an offense that's brilliant, that brilliant, that also can, threaten in so many ways. It's Tyreek with Waddle, even with how they used Durham Smythe last week. So like Achane can keep it going, but it would be fairly historically unprecedented if Achane, like in a variety of ways, if Achane keeps having a year like he has. All right. Let's see. Pacheco. We're not going to do Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn stinks. Let's stop. We should have never worried about Deuce Vaughn. That was how the thesis should have gone all off season long. Pacheco, though, Pacheco, 0.08 EPA per rush, 0.33 EPA per pass, 16.8 intended touches per game, 14.3 of which are routes. Excuse me. So yeah, let's take that back. 16.8 intended per game, 13.8 of which are rushes, 3 of which are targets. 3.5 red zone rushes per game, 0.8 inside the 5-yard line, also getting 0.5 red zone targets per game. This is great usage, and he's playing great. He and Swift pretty close. I would put Pacheco, better version of Swift right now. And obviously, similar things. Really good teams are going to score a lot of points. The running back playing well alongside of that. Pacheco, not quite as outlier of a runner, but can be out there in pass plays and add material value. Pacheco looks great. I think Pacheco, that's the thing. I think these guys, you could have probably gotten both of them in a 0 RB build. And I think that would be it. It's like Montgomery, Swift, Pacheco, Achane, and you would probably win BBM this year if things just keep trending in the same trajectory. Jahmyr Gibbs. I got to fucking fix this. Hold on one sec. I keep searching in formulas instead of values on my Excel sheet, which is making it a little annoying to pull these guys up. But okay, we're good now. Jahmyr Gibbs, negative 0.08 EPA per rush, negative 0.4 EPA per pass, 14.5 intended touches per game, which is inflated by the one game without Montgomery. 33% avoided tackle rate on run plays. Still has not avoided a tackle when catching a pass, which is bizarre given that he was tremendous at that at Bama. 1.5 red zone rushes per game. Gibbs is doing okay. Like he's not great. Like he's not playing well right now. He's kind of the inverted Achane. He's not playing that well, getting similar work. You would expect Gibbs to come closer to here and Achane at some point to come closer to here, maybe here if he gets more volume. But Gibbs and Achane, I think, are running Bizarro is the best way for me to put that. That I think makes sense for how I view it. Jamal Williams, we're not going to do. James Conner, of course, we got a lot of James Conner fans as always. 0.06 EPA per rush, good. Cardinals, honestly, one of the bigger surprises of the year with how they're just playing efficiently, I think is a big shock. Negative 0.2 EPA per pass for Conner, getting 18 intended touches per game, 15.5 which are rushes, 2.5 which are targets, 1.8 red zone rushes per game, 0.8 inside the 5-yard line, along with 0.5 red zone targets. Pretty good usage. I think he's in this tier of guys. Again, if you're getting 15 to 20 touches, you just kind of go here by default. So I think Conner, I'd put him in a less good spot than Swift because the Cardinals run bad has to come at some point. But I think that Conner goes there. Inverted Achane is my band name. And Inverted Achane does somehow sound sexual. It always does, I guess. James Cook, 0.05 EPA per rush, negative 0.13 EPA per pass, 17.3 intended touches per game, 14 of which are rushes, 30.3 of which are targets, getting 2 red zone rushes per game. So even though he's not getting the work overall, like he's not getting a bell cow work in the red zone, he's getting more than it seems with Harrison and Latavius Murray taking some touches away. So I think Cook, again, he kind of belongs in this tier. This is like the thing I think to target more next year. Obviously, there are ambiguous backfields, but just getting the running back who's going to be the lead back in a top team, a top conference winning potential team. I just think these guys all are kind of the same player, and there's not a whole lot of difference between James Cook and Swift, James Cook and Pacheco. Swift may be more of a ceiling than those two guys, but I think they all just kind of belong around here. We don't need to rank James Robinson, I don't think. Javonte Williams, see what he does. Apparently the issue that he had last week, not going to be a long-term one, but he's not playing great on the year. Negative 0.15 EPA per rush, negative 0.22 EPA per pass. If he doesn't go this week, Samaje Perine should get the majority of the work, but Jaleel McLaughlin will still get some snaps behind him. But Javonte Williams, 13.3 intended touches per game. Obviously, that includes him going out early last time, so those numbers are down. He was closer to 18-ish last time. 1 red zone rush per game. He's just suffering because Denver is not doing great. I think that with the injury risk and the re-injury risk, apparently some of the Twitter doctors think that his hip issue might have been connected to the ACL thing because you favor your hip a little bit more as you're in recovery with the ACL. So I think Javonte is just the re-injury risk to me puts him back here. If he were healthy and full go, he would at least be in this Pierce Madison tier. He's not healthy and full go, and the offense is even worse. So I think that for Javonte, that's about right for him to go. Dobbins, we're not going to do. Joey JoJo Mixon. What's he got going? Can't be good. Negative 0.02 EPA per rush, negative 0.2 EPA per pass, 18.5 intended touches per game, 14.8 of which are a rush, 3.8 of which are a target, 2.3 red zone rushes per game, 0.3 of which are inside the 5-yard line, 0.3 red zone targets per game. He is suffering because of this offense being shit. If this offense is running better, he will play better in terms of at least the fantasy production, if not the efficiency metrics. Joe Mixon for right now is Alexander Madison, is Dameon Pierce. I think the spot's maybe a little bit better, but is it really? The spot's better if you assume the Bengals are going to get better. The spot's not better if you think Joe Burrow's going to keep being hurt and playing like this. But I think that's pretty much it. How did Jaleel look as a prospect? Small but fast. Peyton's calling card. He wasn't like a highly touted one. He came from a small school, if I'm remembering correctly. So I was not a guy that I think would have graded out as being somebody that I would really, plant a flag for, like a Roshan, like an H-Han, like who else do we take? Kendre, like all those guys. But they liked him a lot in the preseason. So he might be a guy that can get there, but he's, better Deuce Vaughn, be the best way to put it, I think, in terms of the size and the opportunity and all that. Josh Jacobs. Take a sip of water here. Woo! Negative 0.13 EPA per rush, not negative, 0.02 EPA per pass flat. So he is a positive metric there, catching passes, 22 intended touches per game, 15.5, which are rushes for Josh Jacobs, 2.8 red zone rushes, 1.3 inside the 5-yard line. He has his best game in the game where they basically couldn't trust Aiden O'Connell to do the work at QB to actually get the production. I don't know if that's great for him, but the usage is still pretty good. So I think for Josh Jacobs, slightly better spot than Derrick Henry. Yeah, he's like David Montgomery adjacent, Derrick Henry adjacent is where I'd put Josh Jacobs for now. I think there's still more of a ceiling there, but the Raiders kind of feel like a cursed team. I thought that the bet to make on them with best ball in the offseason was like, everybody thinks they're going to suck. You play them being average, and that could be a thing that actually leads to results. But I think for Jacobs, like he and Devontae Adams, the more that things run bad for this team, the more that things like just don't look competitive, like they can actually win a division, let alone make a playoff spot. I think that Jacobs could go the other way, but good usage for him right now. He's just not doing a whole lot with it. Kendre Miller. It's honestly not even worth covering Kendre Miller at this point. Down to 6 touches per game, negative 0.03 EPA per rush, negative 0.5 EPA per pass. That's not too good. 1 target per game. If he's going to get killed by the Alvin Kamara usage, he's just not going to do much. He right now is the bad version of Damian Harris is what I would put him at. Kenneth Walker, 0.06 EPA per rush, 0.18 EPA per pass. He's still playing better than he probably should. 31% avoided tackle rate. So Walker, he and Dameon Pierce, similar last year, where they weren't very good in efficiency metrics, weren't good at success rate, weren't good at any of that, but they both avoided tackles at a 33% clip. One of them is keeping it going. Kenneth Walker is still there. Dameon Pierce has fallen off pretty substantially in year 2. But the red zone usage is the main thing for Walker. 4.5 red zone rushes per game, 2 inside the 5-yard line, 0.3 inside the red zone at his targets. The usage is too good for Walker. I think that Charbonnet is still the better back, but Walker has improved enough from year 1 to year 2 that I think Kenneth Walker probably deserves to be around here. It might be a better spot than Bijan because of the rushing red zone work. Kenneth Walker, I think he's a little bit less good of a player than Bijan. Like if Bijan had Kenneth Walker's role, he's probably putting up 150-yard days with like 2 touchdowns pretty easily, if not fucking 200 yards in total yardage. But Walker still has improved enough. Walker, I think, quietly a very good player. But we'll see, because it does seem like it just sometimes looks, in its eyeball test, it just seems like he doesn't have the same amount of juice as Zach Charbonnet sometimes. And Kenneth Walker still too, like will try to avoid 3 tackles in the backfield. It's just like he does some dumb shit, but the usage is good enough there that I don't think you can argue it. Let's see. Khalil Herbert, another guy whose role is theoretically in danger, but he had the outlier game last week to maybe keep it at bay. 0 flat EPA per rush, negative 0.6 EPA per pass. So he really should not keep a pass game role. 14 intended touches per game. 1 red zone rush. The lack of red zone work is pretty tough. I think for Khalil Herbert, I think he's still just a risk to lose the job, but I think he's like in this A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones spectrum in terms of the spot, and I would put him right here. I think he's closer to like basically average. I think anybody could really do what Khalil Herbert does for the most part, and I think he's still a risk to lose the role to Roschon Johnson. But for right now, he held him at bay for 1 week, had the outlier week. I just wouldn't expect him to do it again, personally. Miles Sanders, I feel like this is the part where things start to feel slow because of the crappy players that we're going through. Negative zero point 0.3 EPA per rush, that is bad. Negative 0.15 EPA per pass, that is also bad. Coming off the injury last week, did get some workload decreases overall, but he's at 19.3 intended touches per game, 17.3 of which, 13.5 of which are in the run game. So he's getting a lot of targets. So anybody who's like, Miles Sanders is going to be involved in the pass game, completely wrong. But I think Miles just playing shittily. He is a worse version right now of the Madison tier. Just a lot of volume, but not doing a lot with it. Is he avoiding tackles? 6% avoided tackle rate. That is really bad. Man, I hate to say it, but he might not have any juice left. And I thought that he was an interesting player as a guy getting the biggest free agent contract, but he is suffering with this entire team. And I guess everybody in Carolina is not great, so maybe unfair to grade him, but just playing like shit so far. Najee, negative 0.13 EPA per rush, negative 0.18 EPA per pass, down to 13.8 intended touches per game. The whole thesis of Najee Harris was that he was going to get bell cow work. He's not getting it. He is A.J. Dillon, I think is basically it. He only has under 1 red zone rush per game on the year, too. So he is suffering with the offense. Man, honestly, this spot is so fucking bad. Is it a worse spot for Najee Harris than Eli Mitchell? That can't be right. I'll put him between Eli and A.J. Dillon. But God, Najee, he should be at least Dalvin tier, but Najee goes here. Najee's not doing himself any favors. I don't think he's good, but the team is so bad that I'm going to kind of give him a little bit of grace. But Najee is just shit, and the team is shit, and the whole situation is just very frustrating. If you, like me, did believe in Pittsburgh a little bit in the offseason, just being able to be average and competitive, and now they're getting smoked by Houston. That's not a great sign. Rachaad White. Negative 0.13 EPA per rush, 0.03 EPA per pass, pretty good. 19 intended touches per game. Let's see, 15.8 of which are in the run game. He's getting 3.3 red zone rushes per game. So quietly a very good red zone rush workload for Rachaad White. 0.8 inside the 5-yard line as well. He's not terribly efficient with everything, but I think he is currently Brian Robinson tier. Better spot? Same spot? I think kind of the same spot. Man, so that means that he's like Derrick Henry? That can't be right. He's got to be a little bit behind Derrick Henry. But I think Rachaad White goes here. This is a pretty good run out for Rachaad White. He's not like a world beater. He's not Kieran Williams like going out there and taking a great advantage of the work. But he's also not getting quite as good of a work as Kieran Williams. So I think Rachaad White doing what he can to keep teams afloat, but certainly, not a world beater by any stretch. Ramondre, dog shit, negative 0.2 EPA per rush, negative 0.1 EPA per pass, 19 intended touches per game, 15 of which are in the run game, 1.8 red zone rushes per game. All the reports about Ezekiel Elliott stealing a starter's role, not the case so far, but Ramondre is just suffering because of the team right now. He is, I think, a little better than Madison, a little better than Pierce. I think he and Mixon are closer to 1-to-1 than it might seem. Ramondre goes here for me. Don't think he's anything close to a superior player. Don't think he was worth the ADP, as I said all offseason, but he is going right there, and more power to him. Roschon Johnson, 0.04 EPA per rush, negative 0.07 EPA per pass. So better than Khalil Herbert, but still negative, which might just be the case with Justin Fields. 8.5 intended touches per game, 5.5, which are rushes, is getting 1 red zone rush per game, 0.8 inside the 5-yard line, 0.5 red zone targets per game as well. He just needs Khalil Herbert to go away. I don't know how that changes necessarily. Right now, he and Breece Hall are simpatico. Slightly worse spot for Roschon, though, because we are going to see Breece theoretically get an increase in workload. And on the year, anyway, Breece Hall is still getting 2 touches per game more than Roschon. So Roschon and Breece, brothers in arms right there. Let's do Saquon. Negative 0.02 EPA per rush, negative 0.5 EPA per pass, 20 intended touches per game before the injury. Will he be back soon? Maybe. He and Eckler are kind of similar on that front. Not similar in terms of the talent, though. Saquon Barkley is the bizarro Austin Eckler here. He is not very good. He's on a shitty team, but getting 20 touches a game. And you do think that the Giants should be a little better with Saquon. There is some data that goes against that, though. The Giants are apparently as hapless with Saquon in terms of the wins, in terms of all that stuff, even when Saquon has good games. That said, he's going to get 20 touches when he gets back in there. When he gets back in there, though, we'll find out. Glad I do not have much Stevenson in my life. That is true. I'm glad for Steven too, because he is a Pats fan and very deep in the bag. RBs suck at football. They do. I mean, not all of them. Like there are a few. Like, look, you got can highlight some guys that are playing well. It's just that it's like tight end. It's just that 2 out of the 32 tight ends are going to play well, and then 10 of the 64 running backs that get meaningful work are going to play well, and that's basically what it is. Running is just less efficient. I'm going to spare Rank and Tank Bigsby. Tank, I know I say I rank every player, but like guys that are just losing the role, Tank is down to 4.7 to 10 touches per game. He's also still not getting any improvements in anything because he's not getting the work and a chance to improve. Tank now, again, as I said last week, does seem like he needs ATN to come out. Same thing with Rashad Penny. It's just all those guys are kind of the same. Tony Pollard, negative 0.01 EPA per rush, but he's getting such volume. 0.02 EPA per pass, 22.5 to touches per game. That number came down quite a bit because of the no-show against New England, but 18.3 rushes per game, 4.3 targets. And still, despite, again, a real dog shit game against New England, 6.8 red zone rushes per game for Tony Pollard leads the league. 2.3 inside the 5-yard line is pretty close to the top of the league, getting 1 red zone target per game. Just one of the best workloads in football. He's not doing everything in the world with it. Like, I don't think he is McCaffrey tier. He's honestly just David Montgomery. Like Tony Pollard and David Montgomery, with what the workloads have been so far. And Pollard doesn't have a Jahmyr Gibbs breathing down his neck. But Pollard, with how he's played, is just getting a lot of volume and doing okay with it in an efficient offense. And that's sort of all we can ask. This is stupid. This is not the take. Lenny, you're not funny enough to make these kind of takes. That's how I feel about it, but more power to you. Continuing to hang out here and give dog shit efforts. Unbelievable. Tyjae Spears. Tyjae Spears, 0.12 EPA per rush, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, 8.5 attempted touches per game, 5 of which are rushes. His role is coming down, but it's not anything useful right now. Tyjae, unfortunately, probably needs a Derrick Henry injury to get there. If Derrick Henry goes out, Tyjae probably looks a lot better. Tyjae in between these guys, and I think he's closer to the middle tier. But the work, like, I don't know, the work gets better. Like, Derrick Henry needs to see more work, and that's not going to help Tyjae. So he just needs a Derrick Henry injury at that point. Pollard's in a great spot. She needs to turn on the engines. I think that's accurate. I just don't think he can do that over the course of a year, getting this many touches. Like that was what I was seeing at the end of last year. The efficacy started to come down a little bit. Like he was a darling when he was getting 10 to 15 touches. When he gets 15 to 18, it gets worse. Now he's getting 25. It's just hard for guys to stay that efficient when the volume increases that much, but that's how they want to use him in Dallas. So good for fantasy that you get that much usage, but he's just not going to be the same level of explosive player. He's just going to be a guy that has some nice runs in short space, and that's sort of all you can hope for. Tyler Algier, and we have to go and grab a few guys who are not in alphabetical order here. Algier, negative 0.1 EPA per rush. This fucking bums me out. Negative 0.35 EPA per pass, 13.3 intended touches per game, 11.3 of which are rushes. Is still getting 2.3 red zone rushes per game, so that's more than Bijan. 0.8 inside the 5-yard line. Algier is not playing well right now. Pretty good workload, Najee level workload. Fuck, he's basically Najee right now. Najee with better red zone work is Tyler Algier, which is not fun. Oh well. That's good. There goes Tyler Algier. He's just not that dude right now. All right. Got a few more guys to grab from here. We're not going to do CEH. I don't see the point in that. Kyron Williams, we always have to do. Kyron Williams, actually a positive EPA rusher, surprises me there. He had some good runs against Indianapolis, but I'm still shocked over the course of the volume. 0.04 EPA per rush for Kyron Williams, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, getting 21.5 intended touches, 16 of which are rushes in this game. 4.3 red zone rushes, though. That is elite level usage, 1.3 inside the 5-yard line, also getting 1.8 red zone targets. He is just getting tremendous usage. Like this is, where does Kyron go? Kyron is got to go. Is it a better role than Pollard? And is he a better player right now than Pollard? I think he might be a slightly better version of Tony Pollard. I'm going to put Kyren here. One of the best roles in football, a little more efficient than Tony Pollard is right now. Obviously, I think that's more because of the offenses, as well as, Tony's just a little bit smaller. But Kyren Williams, tremendous workload. I don't know that he can get back to this McCaffrey tier, but you are getting bootleg McCaffrey usage for Kyren Williams, bootleg McCaffrey efficiency as well for a guy that was going into 18th round. So Kyren, I think, you don't have to take Eric Gray, Lenny. You could take Kyren Williams instead. You fucking dipshit. Anyway, there goes Kyren. Who else do we have to grab from here? Raheem Mostert. Mostert's usage took a big drop last week, which would worry me, but a 0.08 EPA on the year, 0.34 EPA per pass, 2.5 red zone rushes. The Mostert part is just that you are really worried about how this is going to affect things for him with Devon Achane, his rise here. But Mostert, I think, playing very well. Definitely not to an Achane tier, but not far off of Aaron Jones. I think right now he goes here. And I guess it wouldn't shock me if week to week, if you saw Mostert come closer to here and Achane maybe go down, but it just seems like they are very committed to getting more usage for Achane overall. Who else do we have to rank at running back? Let's just rank Jonathan. Let's use Zach Moss as a way to rank Jonathan Taylor. Oh, we didn't do Charbonnet. Charbonnet 0.1 EPA per rush, negative 0.9 EPA per pass, so not adding a lot of value in the pass game, which was sort of the thesis of Zach Charbonnet. It's not working out. But Charbonnet on the year, 7 intended touches per game, 5.3 of which are rushes. So Charbonnet's usage, not that great. He's kind of in the Tajay tier, I believe, maybe a little better than Tajay. But he needs to move more this way. He needs to get more work. I think he can, but Charbonnet for right now, not that far off from Tajay. And I think that covers off pretty well. Besides Zach Moss. Zach Moss, negative 0.08 EPA per rush, negative 0.01 EPA per pass, 24.7 intended touches. So he's been getting a lot of work. Let's not even do Zach Moss. Jonathan Taylor as Zach Moss, will put him in. I think this workload is going to be really strong for Jonathan Taylor. I guess you could still see Zach Moss taking 5 to 10 touches off the table for Taylor. So maybe he just gets to 20 flat. But Taylor, I think with just that workload from the jump, assuming that everything is normal, assuming that he wants to get back out there and they're going to use him normally and not do any weird shit because of the trade request. I think that Taylor right now is basically in a Josh Jacobs level tier with potential to be in this Tony Pollard, Kyren Williams tier. And that's how we'll close out running back. Same thing with Williams as Pollard, though. I think long-term, it's hard to maintain that volume, fantasy points mostly. I mean, the fact that he's a positive EPA rusher right now after getting this volume for 4 weeks kind of surprises me for Kyren. So that's why I think there's a little bit of hope there. But they are, they're not dissimilarly sized guys. So I think you're not wrong on that one, Steve. A little more intent to use Kyren creatively, though, would be the one thing I would say. All right, that closes out running back. So we will crown the apex predator in terms of the overall here. The overall spagsiness of it, the superior player on the great spot is, in fact, CMC. But the most superior player is going to be Devon Achane. Devon Achane. I've come up with different pronunciations for his name. But Devon Achane is right now. I don't know how he keeps doing this. I don't know how it works out, but there are a lot of things working in his favor. That bodes pretty well. Does Taylor help keep AR healthy and make it a good pair, or will he really hurt AR's fantasy value? I think that he doesn't hurt or help that much. I think he's just Zach Moss. So I don't know. For me, I think that Taylor is in a really good situation for himself to get 2 touchdown days. That said, like, if AR is running hot, there's got to be a push-pull there. So he's probably going to be more efficient than he's ever been in his career, but the volume is probably going to be lower than he's ever been in his career, would be my guess. First live view of this video, and I'm exhausted. Props to you, Spags. I appreciate that. It is, again, it's a labor of love. It's a process here, because this is how I come up with all my takes. It's just kind of looking through this stuff, figuring out where guys align. So you're seeing it right here. Spags, use your clout and tell AR to start targeting Pittman again. TDs for backup tight ends kill me. Look, I'm with you on that one. I'd love for him to target Pittman, but the heart wants what it wants, and he's just a man that's going to throw to the open guy. That's what you want out of a QB. Again, we'll do the quick pander here. Again, guys, please make sure to subscribe down below, hit the like button, leave a comment. As Ross mentioned, like, this is a lot. There's a lot of work. It's a lot of talking. I'm spitting out numbers. I'm reading. I'm doing all the things in real time here. So help a brother out. Please do subscribe down below as we hit the wide receiver portion of the SPAGS rankings. And maybe we'll get it done overall in an hour. We'll find out. All right. Who's the first receiver? I know there's like a bad part in receivers where I don't want to keep going. So this is going to be the fun part. This is the mental acuity part, the marathon portion of things. AJ Brown, 0.46 EPA per pass. So he is crushing right now. 10.5 intended touches per game. 2.3 deep targets per game. That's also started to level out for him. He's getting 83 of his air yards on deep targets. I said it last week that AJ Brown, or was it last week? I might have said it yesterday. AJ Brown is basically becoming the number one receiver, whereas last year in Shane Steichen's offense, he was the 1A to Devontae Smith's 1B. I think AJ Brown right now is playing like he is a true alpha target earner. He also had to bitch and be a little baby about it, but I think for right now, because there might be a few EPA guys who go above in terms of superior player, this is one of the best spots in the league. Could get a little bit better red zone target work, 1.3 red zone targets per game. But still, if you are to go off of just these first 4 weeks, Brown has moved a tier up. Devontae Smith has moved a tier down. I don't know that's going to hold. I do believe a lot in Devontae, but it just feels like this offense is concentrating more his way. So I think AJ Brown right now does look pretty good. Thank you. I'm on a great pace today. I hope so. It's just impossible. Like once we get past 130, that's when I'm like, oh no, we've made a mistake along the way. We'll keep trucking. AJ Brown would pack heavy CMC bags. I'm sure he would. Amari Cooper, 0.17 EPA per target, so he is not in AJ Brown's tier there. 7.8 intended touches per game. He is not in AJ Brown's tier there anymore. 2.3 deep targets per game does bode pretty well for him. I think Cooper's still good, but this Cleveland offense has been dog shit, so that's going to be a big part of why he's not as successful. Still a pretty good workload, but definitely not an AJ Brown workload. Amari Cooper goes right there. Amon-Ra St. Brown playing through a toe issue. How is he looking so far? 0.23 EPA per target, 9 intended touches per game. That includes 0.3 in the run game per game, which is obviously not anything that crazy. 1 deep shot per game for Amon-Ra with a negative 0.6 EPA. Again, Jared Goff is not taking deep shots, and if he is taking deep shots, he's not doing well with them. So that could get better for Amon-Ra. So slightly better usage than Amari Cooper, slightly more efficient as well. He is the connecting thread between Amari Cooper and AJ Brown is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. AJ Brown is such a little bitch in jail and obviously has been influenced by his tantrums. If you're a Devontae Smith bag holder, I think that is a reasonable stance. But I do think too, it is like a new offensive coordinator and there might be something there of just like some guys like to feed the alpha target earner. Some guys like to take the alpha target earner and use him as a decoy to open up the number 2 guy or a guy who can do some great things like Devontae. But I think for right now, Dallas Goedert and Devontae are suffering because they have to keep feeding AJ Brown, but feeding AJ Brown is working out really well. So I can't begrudge them feeding AJ Brown as much as they are. But it's just like, it sucks for the other Eagles. Brandon Cooks, this is going to be a worthless one. Negative 0.2 EPA per target, 5 targets per game. His air yards per target also down quite a bit from last year, down to 10 per game, which is still okay, I guess. Brandon Cooks, though, like 5 targets for me as a receiver. That just kind of puts you in the middle. And he actually is playing worse than average. So I think Brandon Cooks goes right here. Closer to a mid player than a superior player. How's Brandon Ayuk doing? Brandon Ayuk is still fucking crushing, man. Jesus. 1.2 EPA per target. So he's gone up. This is one where like Devin Achane. Devin Achane's not going to maintain a 0.6 EPA per rush. You would think Brandon Ayuk should not maintain a 1.2 EPA per target, but that's what he's doing right now. And this is now 3 games for him. Obviously, he had the one with the injury, but 6.7 targets per game. That is not elite level usage, but he's the most superior player. This is not possible. This is not something that should be happening a month into the season. So Ayuk is going nuts. Again, for the frame of reference, last year, the highest EPA per target player was Rashid Shaheed, and he's just a pure deep ball guy. So for Ayuk to be doing this while getting, actually, no, he's getting deep targets, 15.5 air yards per target for Ayuk too. That's crazy. 1.3 red zone targets. This usage for Ayuk is really solid for that low of a volume. I think it's a result of just how efficient the targets are. I think Ayuk has to be a little bit closer to Amari Cooper, but like if he had 10 targets a game at this workload, he would theoretically be smashing every single fucking week. Like this is a crazy performance by Ayuk, and nobody's really talking about it, I guess, besides Carlos here and all of his highest scoring teams. But man, that's impressive by Ayuk. He should not be able to do this at that level of volume at this point of the season. Like that should come down. Crazy. Calvin Ridley, solid 0.09 EPA per target, down to 7 targets per game, catching 3.8 of them. 1.3 red zone targets per game, 1.5 deep shots per game to him, 1.3 of which are catchable. Good usage. It's not as good as it was. I think he is a slightly worse version of Amari Cooper right now. I would probably put these guys a little bit closer, but I'll try to keep the names fresh. So Calvin Ridley goes right here. The spot's solid, but he needs to be like a 10 target guy to really have the upside you need. And he's not getting there with Zay Jones sidelines. That's maybe not the best term overall. But yeah, I think it's Calvin Ridley going there. Debating the tush push. The tush push has been what the media said for the last few years, but it was the Bush push initially. But that wasn't a QB sneak play. That was, Matt Leinart and Bush running into the end zone to score a touchdown. So I don't know. I think the brotherly shove is okay. I think Scott Hansen always uses brotherly shove. It's just called a fucking sneak. How about that really good QB sneak they do? Why don't we go with that? CeeDee Lamb, Cedric Tillman's not doing enough to grade him. CeeDee Lamb's still incredibly efficient. A.J. Brown level efficiency, 0.43 EPA per pass, 8.3 targets per game. The A-dot is down, though, to 8.3, so he's not getting that deep downfield. Avoiding tackles well, though, 26% avoided tackle rate. CeeDee Lamb is playing the best football of his career right now. He's just not getting enough volume. So I think he deserves to be exactly flat with A.J. Brown, but the spot is basically a little bit worse than Amon-Ra St. Brown. So CeeDee Lamb is playing great. I don't know that he wins you tournaments necessarily, but I think that he is one of those, again, just a fine receiver to have in the back half of the first round. If you're building that kind of team, like I did, of course, all offseason long, you're just taking receivers heavy. Like CeeDee Lamb is one that I kind of skimmed over a little bit. With this efficiency metrics and still getting enough volume there, he's playing well. It's just like, I just don't expect him to have like a 200-yard day, but looks good. Chase Claypool. We don't even need to read the numbers here. Chase Claypool is just, if you're going to get cut from your team and they can't even find a trade partner for you, but a negative 0.8 EPA per target, 4.7 targets per game, just playing awfully is Chase Claypool. So he goes all the way at the bottom. Justin Fields seems to like him though. So maybe he somehow gets back in, but it doesn't seem likely. 0.27 EPA per target for Chris Godwin. He should see some increased usage if Mike Evans misses some time. Hamstring issue for Mike Evans, reoccurring one. Not great for an older player, especially a downfield runner like Mike Evans. So Godwin, not going to take over that role or anything, but should see an increase in targets. And he's still getting 7.5 targets per game as it is, 1.8 red zone targets. Chris Godwin, I think, is in a pretty decent spot. Yeah, he's definitely not in this tier. Honestly, 0.27, I guess. Better than Amari. Not as good of a usage as these guys, and not as good of a player as Brandon Ayuk, but I think that's where Chris Godwin goes. Tishma should be only reserved for a lady's gift to her gentleman on his birthday. There you go. That's a light little push of it in. Definitely doesn't require a lot more elbow grease to get that going. Chris Olave, 0.09 EPA per target, 9.5 intended touches per game, 130 air yards per game for Olave. So he actually has one of the highest air yard marks in the league. That's pretty good, but he's not playing that well with it. I think he's in a better spot than Ridley, but playing roughly the same. Chris Olave goes there. And you can make the case. Actually, yeah, Chris Olave should go a little bit more to the right. Almost 10 targets per game for Olave. It's just how much do you believe in the Saints? That could maybe knock the spot back down a little bit, but I think there'll be better weeks. Christian Kirk, 0.1 EPA per target. Not that great. 8.8 targets per game, though. So he did salvage. I do think some of that is Zay Jones being out. I would expect Kirk to come down a little bit when Zay Jones gets back in, but we'll see when that occurs. 0.3 red zone targets per game for Christian Kirk. He's fine. He's kind of like shitty, more volume Chris Godwin. I'd put Christian Kirk right here. Christian Watson only had one game, and it was not a good game. Negative 1 EPA per target on 4 targets in that one. Only ran 26 snaps in that game, 18 routes. It'll get better. Again, he was a 0.4 EPA per target guy last year, so you expect that positive regression. Did have one red zone target amidst all of his non-usage in that game. So Christian Watson for right now, I think has to be, he's got to be right here, but this is unfair to fucking do that when he played his first game in the worst game Jordan Love has played. Christian Watson at some point this year, I think, gets closer to like here. For right now, though, that's where Christian Watson goes, and I do not love that. Kamara's ADOT was negative 1.5, so getting a target behind the line of scrimmage. Cooper Kupp, we're not going to, I guess, no, we can't rank him because he hasn't played yet. But Cooper Kupp, I would think, probably comes into this Olave area. He's not terribly efficient last year, but gets a ton of volume, and I do think he will lose a little bit of volume to Puka, but not a lot. Would still project Cooper Kupp to have 8 to 9 targets overall. All right. Let's see. Cortland Sutton. Negative 0.2 EPA per target, 7 targets per game. 1.8 red zone targets is pretty good usage, but he is basically shitty Chris Godwin on a similarly, honestly, a much worse team. So Cortland Sutton goes right here. Devontae Adams. I think another outlier player, hopefully. Yeah, Devontae Adams is A.J. Brown's here. 0.48 EPA per target, 12.5 targets per game. So he's performing incredibly well and getting a ton of volume despite really offensive QB play, or, at least not great QB play for Jimmy G. 2.5 red zone targets a game as well for Devontae Adams is pretty good. Devontae, I think right now, pretty close to an apex predator. There's a lot of volume. There's a lot of work. Still some concern. Again, he got banged up last week, then left the game, then decided to come back in. He's talked about the motivations perhaps waning if the team's not good. So this can definitely move. But I think for right now, he is a better player than A.J. Brown with more volume. I think that all feels pretty good if you are a Devontae bag holder, but a lot more risk for the rest of the season than A.J. Brown has. So if you are thinking about doing that trade or something, that's how that goes. Darnell Mooney, negative 0.2 EPA per pass, 3 targets per game. This is one of the worst roles in football. He also gets the treatment to go down here. Darnell Mooney, man. Yeah, he's not playing well. But the whole offense isn't playing well besides DJ Moore, so what can you do? Let's see. Deebo Samuel. Deebo, 0.35 EPA per target, so pretty good, but definitely nowhere near Brandon Ayuk. 9.5 intended touches per game, 2.8 of which are rush, 0.5 red zone rushes per game, 0.8 red zone targets per game. Mooney wasn't bad last year. He just didn't get a lot of volume, but he was actually pretty efficient. So for him to fall back this meaningfully in that category and also not get work, I think is pretty tough. But he's also getting so little volume that's sort of hard to get a real read. But that's why he goes there. I don't think it's his fault. I don't think he's Chase Claypool bad. I think he's just kind of bad situation. But he's also not good. Deebo, though, with all of his metrics here, got to be a little better than Godwin. He's in this morass. He's definitely not in this Lamb Amon-Ra tier. You can make a case that he's a better player and also might be in a better situation than Amari Cooper. But we'll see how Deshaun Watson goes if he gets back in there and if he can be anything improved. For right now, though, I think Deebo goes there, and I don't feel that bad about it. DeAndre Hopkins, 0.2 EPA per target, 7.8 per game. Chris Godwin. He's basically Chris Godwin right now, which is probably not what you want to see for DeAndre Hopkins with where he was getting drafted. But I think DeAndre Hopkins, it's a pretty good workload. Tannehill's still thrown deep. There's opportunity there. It's just that Tennessee sucks. So that's going to be difficult to always make things work that well when your team is as bad as Tennessee has been so far. Devontae Smith regressing from last year for what it's worth. 0.17 EPA per target. It's actually about half of what he was last year. So that's not the best thing for Devontae. 7.3 targets per game. Also not the best thing for Devontae. 0.3 per game inside the red zone, all of which have been inside the 5-yard line target-wise. Man, Devontae is unfortunately, I think, a little bit worse situation and a little bit worse of a player than Chris Godwin. Devontae goes right here. Would have really liked to see him move this way, but as long as A.J. Brown stays up here, Devontae's going to be here in terms of the workload and opportunity. And I think they should meet in the middle here at CeeDee Lamb range, but I just don't know that's the inclination of the team so far based on what we've seen. Deontay Johnson, we won't rank. DJ Moore. DJ Moore's crushing. 0.6 EPA per target, 6.3 targets per game, so not the greatest workload. 2.3 deep shots per game, 1.5 of which are catchable. He's making that work for him, good for a 0.6 EPA. It's not a bad role for DJ Moore. It's just definitely not an alpha role. I think for right now, he is a better version of Chris Godwin with a slightly less opportunity. Love the long streams. These are the ones I usually get to catch from the West Coast. Hey, shout out Seth here. I'm glad that somebody out there enjoys this. No, there's been a lot of positive feedback about those, but I know I'm basically a hipster band here doing 2.5-hour rankings videos. So I get it. But I do really appreciate all you guys who chime in with kind words. And of course, the subscribers too. We always see a lot more new subscribers from these videos too. So if you enjoy this process, you will hopefully enjoy Splash Play. That would be the one thing I would say. DK Metcalf still crushing on the year, 0.74 EPA per target. The issue is his target load is down so low, 5.8 targets per game. Geno Smith, as we talked about earlier, is not stretching the ball downfield as much. That's going to hurt DK Metcalf quite a bit, but he's great when he's catching it. Still getting 1 deep shot per game, 0.8 of which are catchable, 1 red zone target per game. I mean, he definitely needs more work. He needs to get more red zone targets. A lot of those have been going Lockett's way so far. The usage is not good enough, but he is basically a DJ Moore. I think he's a better version of DJ Moore right now, playing out of his mind, but the workload's not there. So that is tough for him to make sense of. And I don't know, Metcalf deserves better than this, I think. Like he deserves to be A.J. Brown is how I feel about DK Metcalf. And he's not being used that way by Seattle. And that bums me out. And I don't think he ever can be used that way by Seattle. Donovan Peoples-Jones. Negative 0.4 EPA per target, 3.3 targets per game. I'm glad we can have some company for the Bears, guys. Donovan Peoples-Jones goes right here in the Bermuda Triangle of shit and Bears receivers. Drake London. Oh, no. Poor Drake. Forgot about Drake is what they did. No, man, he's playing terribly. Negative 0.5 EPA per target, 5.3 targets per game. The A-dot is at 10, so that's okay, but could be better. 1 deep target per game, 0.8 of which are catchable, and he's catching them. 1.5 red zone targets per game, 0.3 of which inside the 5-yard line. You can't do much with 5 targets. He is the inverse version of DK Metcalf right now. I don't know how it gets better. I think Heineke would make it better right away. Heineke, the one thing he could do last year was feed Terry McLaurin. I think he could do that again for Drake London, but I don't know how it gets better with Ritter. He had 1 good game, and that's been basically it. So Drake London really underperforming so far, not moving the way you want to see a year 2 receiver with his pedigree. So that is definitely a cause for concern. Elijah Moore, negative 0.4, EPA per target. So that is not good. 8.5 inside of touches per game, 1.5, which are a rush, 0.5 inside the 5-yard line. Shitty roll, a lot of opportunity, but still not a great role. And he's playing like shit. I think he goes like right here. Just low A-dot throws, not helping him out either. He's just not the Cleveland overall, like Cleveland and Chicago, the team structure is kind of holding these guys back unless you are DJ Moore or if you're Amari Cooper. But even then, these guys are being held back to some capacity. Gabe Davis. And Gabe Davis, 0.65 EPA per target. So he's making it count on his 4.8 intended touches per game, 0.3 of which are a rush, 1.5 deep shots per game, 1 of which is a catchable ball, and he's catching 0.8 of those. So he's doing what he can. 0.5 red zone targets, 0.3 inside the 5-yard line. This is an okay role for Gabe, and he's playing well with it. I think he is basically Metcalf and Moore, but with less of a role. So he's not the alpha target earner, but playing about as well as those guys. So that's where Gabe Davis goes. And honestly, pretty good showing for Gabe Davis, all things considered. Garrett Wilson, negative 0.14 EPA per target, 9 targets per game. He's getting 1.3 deep shots per game, 0.5 of which are also catchable, so that's not too good. 1.5 red zone targets. The workload, the volume is there. He's not playing that well with it. He is basically bad Calvin Ridley or slightly worse Calvin Ridley right now. And I think that's honestly okay, given that Zach Wilson's at QB, but could be a lot better. It could definitely be a lot better. I don't know that it would have been a lot better with Aaron Rodgers, if I'm being honest, but could be at least a little better with Aaron Rodgers. Pickens on the year, 0.14 EPA per target. Last year, he was about a 0.37 guy, so that's not what you want to see going the wrong way. But Kenny Pickett's been so bad downfield that I think Pickens has some cover there. 7.5 targets per game. Not a lot of red zone work, 0.8 of those in the red zone. Only getting 0.3 deep shots per game when that's George Pickens' game, man, is get him open downfield. He can run more routes now. That's great. You still want him getting downfield and getting targeted. The usage is very frustrating. I think he is right now a slightly worse Devontae Smith. I don't think it's on him. I really don't. I know I'm a Pickens bag holder, a Pickens believer, all that stuff, but he deserves better than this. And I think, honestly, I think Pickett deserves better than this too. But Pickens in particular, if you put him on a million different teams, he would be smashing right now. And instead he's on Pittsburgh in this quagmire of mediocrity that they are. And it's very frustrating. How about my Gabe Davis bags? Just wish he gets more targets. I don't know that's ever going to change, but if he's going to be this efficient, though, with the targets he gets, he's going to give you spike weeks, and ultimately, that's not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, never the worst thing to get a spike week. Jahan Dotson. I think Jahan Dotson got on the board with a touchdown this week, but still on the year, negative 0.3 EPA per target. 7.8 air yards per target is also not that great. 6.3 targets per game is okay, but he's only getting 0.3 deep shots per game. This is okay usage for Jahan Dotson, but he's not playing that well with it. He is closer to Elijah Moore than he probably should be as well. He is basically, I think, a similar player to George Pickens in terms of the spot situation, but he's playing a lot worse than Pickens. So Dotson goes there, not the breakout candidate I think that a lot of people wanted to see. Jacoby Myers, Negative 0.2 EPA per target, same offensive environment as Davante Adams, and he's not playing as well in it. Is getting 8.7 intended targets per game, though, so that bodes pretty well. Good volume there. 2 red zone targets per game, 1 inside the 5-yard line per game. Pretty good usage. I think he is Christian Kirky. I would say inverse Christian Kirk, playing a little bit worse than Christian Kirk. I still think his value is mostly contingent on Davante Adams, though. Somebody pointed out a lot more first read targets for Jacoby Myers and Jimmy G at QB than you would think. So he's probably a more important part of the offense than I and a lot of people would give credit for. But I think the way that he benefits the most is like attention goes Davante Adams' way. You then look Jacoby Myers' way. So he, to me, just inherently is never going to rise to this level. But I think him being around here is not a bad sign for Jacoby Myers, given where he went ADP-wise. All right, dude, we got next. Jalen Hyatt. I'm not even going to rank Jalen Hyatt. It's no use. He's not getting used at all. He needs to be used more. They need somebody to get downfield to be useful. And for some reason, it's not Jalen Hyatt. Jamar Chase, 0.32 EPA per target, which is where T. Higgins was last year. Jamar Chase was a slightly negative EPA per target guy. Chase was was definitely the one that was lagging in that category, but getting a ton of volume. This year, he's more efficient and getting 10.5 intended touches per game. So that looks pretty good. 0.3 of which are rushes for Jamar Chase. Only 0.8 deep shots per game, as we mentioned earlier. The Bengals not attacking downfield as well or with as much volume, so that's not great for him. But this level of usage with how good he's playing, he right now is a slightly worse A.J. Brown, I think, or a slightly better Chris Olave if you want to spin it that way. But definitely could be a little better. Imagine paying Daniel Jones a huge bag for him to not throw the ball to guys who can get behind defenses. They really just don't trust him to do anything. I mean, I'll say it, like if you're running on 3rd and 10 in a game that's in hand and you're like, and there's things you learn throughout the course of the game and you're still just handing it off. It's just like, it's bad coaching, honestly, but it's also the lack of trust in your QB. I don't know why you pay him that contract if you're just not going to let him turn it loose. At a certain point, they're gonna. All these teams that are playing like shit right now, like the Bears, the Giants, at a certain point, they're just going to play playground ball and just let the guy do stuff. And then Daniel Jones will be good again. And it's like, well, stop trying to fucking pigeonhole these guys. Stop trying to force them into these boxes because you're killing their progression as well as killing the team. And it's just, that's coaching arrogance, I think, more than anything. Jameson Williams not going to rank. He was pretty inefficient last year. I think that what's going to end up for him is he'll be somewhere, worst case, Brandon Cooks, best case, Gabe Davis. But that would be where I would put Jameson Williams if we were to rank him. Jackson Smith and Jigba. This is probably not going to be a good one. Oof, negative 0.5 EPA per target. This is such a crime. JSN was one of the best EPA guys in college. Obviously, not this past year, but the year before last, where he played the full year. Was so good playing out of the slot, and it's hard to have a really high EPA out of the slot. But he and Josh Downs both accomplished that. And now it's Njigba's just useless. Like he's getting 2.9 air yards per target, which is absolute. That's running back tier. Not getting any deep shots. Not being used creatively, 5 targets per game. This is awful. This is an awful run out for Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm going to put him right here. I mean, honestly, he should be like right here. Terrible run out for him. I don't know how it gets better. I think the only way it gets better materially would be one of Metcalf or Lockett goes out, in particular Lockett. I think if he got the Lockett role, he'd be a better version of Lockett. And I know that's a sacrilege. Oh, Tyler Lockett's been doing it for so long. JSN was really fucking good in college, and he is not good right now, and I don't think that's on him. So Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't know what the hope out is, but I think it is really Lockett getting hurt is probably it. Jaden Reed, 0.3 EPA per target, 6.5 targets per game. Workload coming down a little bit, 37.5 snaps with Christian Watson back in the mix. Getting deep targets, though, 1.5 deep targets per game for Jaden Reed. I think Jaden Reed's playing pretty well. Jaden Reed, to me, I think belongs a little bit worse spot than Devontae Smith. Jaden Reed, though, playing rough. He's playing a little better than Devontae, actually. So let's put him right here. Good showing for Jaden Reed, just not the volume you need to have a really big upside. But anytime you see this much efficiency, though, like these guys where there's not great volume, but a good amount of efficiency, they're probably going to have outlier days at some point. So I think Jaden Reed's still in the mix, but definitely going to get hurt by Christian Watson being back out there. Jalen Waddle, 0.6 EPA per target, down to 5.7 targets per game, though. That is not the best for him. Actually, 5.3 intended touches, 5.3 targets per game because he's getting a rush. So not great usage for Waddle. But really efficient, 1.3 deep targets, one of which are catchable balls. He's catching 0.7 of those. Man. He's really good, but this workload basically puts him better version of Gabe Davis. slash slightly less good spot is DK Metcalf. Probably more prone to spike weeks than some of the guys in this range because of the Miami offense. But this is it's not the growth you want to see from Waddle entering another year. Tyreek is just, I think, too good, taking enough off the table for him that he's not going to get there. Jerry Jeudy, 0.12 EPA per target, 5.7 targets per game. 1.7 of those are deep shots. Not a lot of air yards overall per game, though, just 78. Judy's role, just kind of mediocre. A little bit worse than George Pickens, I guess. So Jeudy goes right here. But good player, like, is doing what he can with it. But it's just when you have, again, 9 guys targeted in a game, I don't know how you get there if you're Jerry Jeudy. He needs to be getting 10 targets to really have the ceiling to even hit his ADP, and he's not doing it yet. Not going to rank Mingo. Mingo's been one of the worst players in football, and frankly, the Panthers would be better off benching him and playing Terrace Marshall, but I am a biased Terrace Marshall bag holder there, so we're not going to cover these guys, but I do think Mingo, one of the biggest disappointments so far. Jordan Addison put up a flat 0 this past week, but still has a 0.2 EPA on the year, 5 targets per game. Not a great workload, still pretty efficient with it. Still has the spike play, the splash play upside that you can get to week. But I think for me, Addison, this spot is getting a little bit closer to average, and he's playing. Yeah, I think he's like worse Gabe Davis right now would be what I would say for Addison. He's going to get a shot per game, which is a positive. Like, he's going to get one of those 50-yard throws by Kirk. And if he gets it, then he's having a good week. If he doesn't get it, he's going to have a bad week. And I think we saw last week, he didn't get it, had the bad week. That's how I expect him to go until he can pass KJ Osborne, which he's not done yet in the situation. I would not. All right. Keep it going here. Josh Downs, 0.06 EPA per target, 6.8 intended touches per game. This is okay usage for Josh Downs. Could definitely be better. Only a 6.2 ADOT for him, so it's not doing a whole lot for you. But Downs, I mean, honestly, 6 targets per game is more than I would have thought. 6.8. Man, is he really? I guess Josh Downs is theoretically in a better situation than Jerry Jeudy. That doesn't feel right. I think these guys are in the same situation, more volume for Downs, but just not a player that has the potential of some of the guys in this range. But maybe he does. I don't know. I think there's going to be more good Pittman weeks than Downs weeks, but the usage is not as far off as it should be. So Downs well ranked there. Juju playing terribly, negative 0.36 EPA per target, 5.3 targets per game. I really thought that Juju could at least be competent this year, but his offense is killing him. He is basically JSN, a little better JSN, slightly better workload. There goes Juju, right in between JSN and Brandon Cooks. Justin Jefferson, at least this will be a good guy. 0.32 EPA per target, 12 targets per game, which I believe is second most in the NFL behind Davante Adams. Adams technically playing a little bit better than him. Jefferson, though, getting more downfield targets and performing better with those. 2.5 deep targets per game, 1.5 of which is catchable, and Justin Jefferson is catching all of them. He's also getting 1.3 red zone targets per game, which is a little bit less than Adams. So I think the spot is a little bit less good than Adams is. I think he's playing a little bit less good than Adams, or less well than Adams overall. Jefferson, though, firmly in this tier. Teams with Jefferson, Chase, Adams, AJ Brown. I think they all kind of look the same right now to start the year. Juju can't run. Yeah, that's a problem. But, then why sign him? Like, why sign him and pay that much? You have doctors. I don't know. The whole thing chafes my nuts a little bit, but it's fine. I wasn't like heavily exposed to Juju. I think I ended up a little bit above the field. But I really thought that he could at least be a guy that gets you 6 to 8 targets, maybe a touchdown here and there. And he's not even looking like that. It's not good. Kadarius Toney leveling out a little bit more, negative 0.4 EPA per target. Last year he was a little bit above 0.3, so you expect that to get better. But he is down to just 3.8 intended touches per game, playing only 12.5 snaps. I don't know what gets Kadarius Toney going at this point, besides maybe some desperation by the Chiefs, but he has got to go. Oh no, this makes me sad. I think he is in this tier. It is now a quadrant, a quadricep group here of guys that just suck, and Kadarius Toney is one of them. All right. Oh, good. Dog hacking up a lung. Always fun to hear on the mic. Keenan Allen. Boy, Keenan Allen's still the best receiver in football. 0.7 EPA per target, 11.5 targets per game, 1.3 of which are deep shots. He also had the bad week this past week, but historically does tend to play better when Mike Williams is out, so I don't think that's necessarily how it's going to go moving forward. Keenan Allen, I think right now, Not quite Brandon Ayuk in terms of superiority, but the workload is pretty much close to these guys. I don't know that he's an apex predator necessarily yet, but he is looking pretty good. And he might technically be the apex predator because the red zone work is a little bit less good than Devontae, but he's more efficient than Devontae. It's pretty close. It's pretty close. Keenan Allen, though, again, another guy you add to this tier. These are all great players. If you have groupings, if you have two of these receivers, your team is probably looking really good right now. Marquise Brown. This is the part here of the receiver tier where it's like, we got some good guys out, and then it's like the Marquise Browns of the world where it's like, oh, fuck. Marquise Brown, 0.3, honestly, 0.34 EPA per target for Marquise Brown, 8.3 intended touches per game. That is better than you would think for Marquise Brown. He is rising with the tide of this Arizona offense. Still not showing any outlier upside really yet, but 1.3 deep shots per game. Marquise Brown, man, I think he's playing okay. He's like Debo adjacent. He's in here. That's a lot better than I would have thought from Marquise Brown in the offseason. I really think that's an interesting one. Wish I had more exposure to Allen. I do too, but more workload, more hamstring issues. That's still there. So I don't feel bad about my Quentin Johnston bags, but Keenan Allen, I do think like it's hard to expect him to not give you a lot of 20 to 40 point games coming up. There's going to be the occasional drop week where things just go another way. Herbert running this week. Some point the running backs will be back in there. That'll hurt Keenan Allen too. But I do think that Keenan Allen, one of the best spots in the league, but I do think a little more room to move there than say like Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. Mims' workload is so nothing. But he's a 0.98 EPA per target. So that's pretty crazy. To put that in context, we talked about with Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is at a 1.2 EPA per target, and he's running real routes, like playing a lot of routes, playing a lot of snaps, getting 7 targets a game. Mims, we know, is getting all these deep shots and paying off pretty well at 3.5 targets per game, and he still just has a 0.98 EPA per target. So to give you kind of the framework there, that's what it is. Mims is great, but the workload is pretty poor. He's basically Bizarro land Kadarius Toney. I wish Kadarius Toney were Marvin Mims at this point, but that's not doing well. All right, Michael Pittman. Actually, let's just do Gallup real fast. Gallup is looking better. 0.4 EPA per target, 4.3 targets per game. I think he looks like a better version of Brandon Cooks. Oh no, I picked Tank. My bad. Tank doesn't belong there yet. We'll do him in a sec. Michael Gallup, though, better version of Brandon Cooks with less usage. So he goes about right here. Let me just do Tank real fast because I hate having a guy misplaced on the screen. Tank Dell, 0.56 EPA per target, down to 6.5 intended touches per game. That includes half a rush per game, 1 deep shot per game, catching 0.5 of those, and all of those are the catchable balls. Tank Dell, I think the workload here is Godwin adjacent. He's playing better with it. He is a poor man's DJ Moore. Moore, though, going to have more spike weeks, I would think, than Tank Dell, but the usage for Tank Dell is still pretty good, and that'll be our one guy we do out of alphabetical order. Back to Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman, negative 0.02 EPA per target, 10 targets per game. Fuck. Don't want to see that number going down, but still 10 targets per game is pretty good. The workload is there. The ADOT, though, is, I don't think, that great. Yeah, 6.7 ADOT for Michael Pittman. They just need to open up this Indianapolis offense downfield a bit more. For right now, though, he's basically Garrett Wilson adjacent, Calvin Ridley adjacent, Chris Olave, worse player than Chris Olave. But that's not bad for Pittman's ADP. So I think he's still relatively a value. Going to have some better weeks, but for right now, not showing enough. Michael Thomas, 0.2 EPA per target, 8 targets per game, 1.3 of which inside the red zone. Not avoiding tackles, which is not a surprise given that it's Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas, though, this is a pretty good workload, pretty good opportunity. Better version of Christian Kirk is Michael Thomas right now. Mike Evans, hurt for now. We'll see if he plays this week. Has a 0.48 EPA per target, 7.8 targets per game. Downfield targets is where he's crushing, getting 1.5 of those a game, catching 0.8 of them, but turning that into a 1.13 EPA. Mike Evans, incredibly efficient, going to keep having spike weeks. I think for right now, he is a better version of Chris Godwin, certainly more downfield play, but the injury risk, I think, could knock him down a little bit more. I need to figure out like what makes a mid spot. I might have to like change the rankings a little bit more to give this chart a little bit more breadth, but we'll figure that out next week. Mike Williams out for the year. We're not going to do him. Nico's an important one. Oh boy, Nico, 0.9 EPA per target. And I think that, again, that is all CJ Stroud. Obviously it takes 2 to tango, but Nico Collins is having the best year of his career because of CJ Stroud. 8 targets per game, catching 5.5 of them. 1 deep shot per game, catching half of those, all of which are the catchable balls. 0.5 red zone targets per game, 0.3 inside the 5-yard line per game. Nico's usage is really good. It's not quite in this tier. He is a better version of CeeDee Lamb. Almost an apex predator. He would need to get a few more targets per game, but Nico is playing out of his mind. Definitely one of those guys you could say steal the draft. That'd be Nico Collins. Quentin Johnson, I'm going to skip some of these guys just for the sake of time. Odell, we know what he is. He's hurt. He's getting not a lot of targets. Quentin Johnson playing like shit, negative 0.3 EPA per target, 2.8 targets per game, routes up to snaps up to 20.5 per game, routes up to 14.3 per game. So hopefully that'll keep moving in the right direction. But just nothing shown here. Quentin Johnson also not avoiding tackles after the catch, which was his strength last year at TCU. So that's something for him that would think that'll get better. The fact he's not showing it yet does give you a little bit of concern for the physical profile, that maybe he's not able to dominate guys the same way he did in college. Quentin Johnson, though, for right now with the usage, he unfortunately is next to the quadrant of awfulness here, but not quite all the way there. And I do think the spot gets better for him as the year goes on. But for right now, the usage that he's put on tape, the usage that he's put on paper, not very good. Rashee Rice, I guess we'll rank Rashee. Rashee Rice, positive EPA, 0.08 EPA per target, 5 targets per game on 25.8 snaps, is getting 0.3 deep shots, not as many deep shots as you'd like to see, is getting 1.5 red zone targets per game. So that's pretty good usage for him. I would say that Rashee Rice deserves to be Brandon Cooks adjacent, less of a boom bust player than Jordan Addison, but I think not dissimilar. I'm going to put Rashee Rice a little bit less of a good spot than Jordan Addison because he's not getting that one deep shot per game. But he's still getting enough usage here to be functional. So I think that's Rashee Rice. Fuck. Terry McLaurin, T. Higgins. Let's do that. Oh, no, Diggs. Diggs is there. God, why are there just so many fucking players, man? Every week I realize, why do you rank every player? There's so many players, but this is the process. This is what we're doing. Stephon Diggs, 0.45 EPA per target, 9.8 targets per game. So we are talking A.J. Brown-ish numbers, 1.8 red zone targets per game. He is basically, I would say, 1-to-1 with A.J. Brown. He can go basically right here. Yeah, Bateman, Beckham. I mean, these guys are both they're both efficient. I'm just going to put them over here. We know what they are. Basically like 0.3 EPA per target guys getting about 4 targets per game. It's just not worth it to spend too much time there. Sky Moore. Got to rank every Chiefs receiver. Negative 0.4 EPA per target, 4.8 per game. He really should be losing his snaps, but he is not. He's playing 43.8 per game, 24 of which he's running a route. Sky Moore stinks. He is... He's right here. He's next to JSN. Still the usage is there, opportunities there, but he's just not doing anything with it. It's just, he's running wood sprints, to use that classic phrase. T. Higgins, playing like shit, also injured rib, so we'll see if he goes this week. He says he can play through it. It's a pain tolerance thing. I don't know that you want T. Higgins playing through pain tolerance, given that he's not played well since he didn't get a contract in the offseason. But T. Higgins, negative 0.25 EPA per target, 8 targets per game, 1.3 of which are a deep shot. Oh, fuck, I put Mike Williams in. Oh, well. T. Higgins, you go. Where does Higgins go? He's not playing well. Still getting good work. I think he's here. He's fancy Jahan Dotson right now. Would you try something new, like maybe do top 5, middle 5, and bottom 5 then? Well, the issue for me is like once I decide I'm doing something, I just do it until I don't want to do it anymore. So for right now, we'll keep doing it as it is, but maybe at some point we'll pivot. I don't know. Terry McLaurin, 0.28 EPA per target, 6.5 per game. That basically puts him in Chris Godwin range here, / better version of Jahan Dotson here. I think that's fine. Terry McLaurin's going to have better days, but as we talked about earlier, Washington needs to open up the offense. If they do that, things look better for McLaurin. If they don't, things will look worse for McLaurin. Treylon Burks is hurt. I don't even think he's worth covering. Treylon Burks, by the way, one of those guys, I guess he and Drake London, just kind of a cursed class. Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, all these guys' roles and teams getting substantially worse. Fuck it, we'll put Burks on. Burks, negative 0.09 EPA per target, 4.7 targets per game. Just a useless role, not doing a lot with it. He's honestly a worse version of Brandon Cooks, or at least pretty much the same, not as good of a spot as Brandon Cooks. Tyler Boyd, I can't rank Tyler Boyd. Tyler Lockett, 0.17 EPA per target, 7 targets per game. So more than DK Metcalf. He's also getting 1.8 red zone targets per game. That is more than DK Metcalf. That should not be the case, but it is the case right now. So he is a slightly better version of Terry McLaurin, or a slightly better spot for Terry McLaurin. Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill had the best shots being Apex Predator, 0.55 EPA per target, 10.5 intended touches per game. That includes 0.3 rushes per game. He is also getting 1.8 red zone targets, 2.3 deep shots. I think the spot is getting a little bit worse as Achane seems to rise, which is not the best thing. Waddle at some point also going to have outlier days that should pass up Tyreek. But I think for Tyreek right now, he is currently... he's in this hunt, but he's not quite Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen will end this video as being the apex predator. We'll keep going through here. Wan'Dale Robinson, usage is up for him. Low ADOT stuff though. 3.1 air yards per target for Wan'Dale, 6 targets per game. Good usage. He's basically a less volume version of Elijah Moore with more efficiency. So he goes right here. Zay Flowers, not benefiting from all the absences in the wide receiver core. 0.2 EPA per target, down to 8.5 intended touches per game, including 1.3 rushes. So is playing that bootleg Debo role. He is basically bootleg Debo. Not as good of a usage, not as good of an opportunity, but he should go somewhere around Debo right here. And we got to get Puka. I think Puka's the one that is not in the main grouping here that we have to hit. Where are you at, Puka? There you are. Puka Nacua to close out the wide receivers. Puka, 13.5 intended touches per game at a 0.46 EPA. Ooh. Keenan Allen's EPA was better, but Puka's getting more volume. Puka not getting the red zone work quite as much, though. 0.5 red zone targets per game. Also not getting deep shots. 0.8 deep targets per game. Catching 0.5 of them, which are all the catchable balls. Puka Nacua, I mean, Puka's playing well. I don't think he's an apex predator, but I do think he's in this Nico range. So I'm going to, in fact, I guess Keenan Allen is the apex predator. I feel like Devontae Adams is more so just because of the amount that he controls of the offense, but we will crown Keenan Allen as the apex predator. And Brandon Ayuk, the most superior player. Brandon Ayuk, these numbers don't make sense. What he's doing is absolutely crazy. All right, guys, tight ends. Let's fucking do it. I'm not even going to do any plugs. We're going to get through these tight end sons of bitches, and we're going to be done. And I'm going to feel really good about myself and then hop into another meeting. I'm the only person in the world who has like legitimate professional meetings and does shit like this in between that are just sheer antics, basically, is what I would say. Is now a good time to flood the chat with start-sit questions? Yeah, that's what I want. Please tell me, hey, I got Christian McCaffrey on my team. I've also got Austin Eckler. He's coming back soon. I've also got Bijan Robinson. Which of these 5 to 6 guys should I play? That's how you got to wonder. Puka and Cup combo is what I'm really interested in going forward. Wonder how they play together. I think you're going to see a bootleg version of the Robert Woods Cooper Kupp pairing, but I do think that the routes are going to be a little bit tough because Kupp and Woods ran different routes. Puka and Kupp are running the exact same routes, but I think Puka's still going to be good. It's just going to be like 6 to 8 targets a good as opposed to 13 targets a good, which means he's probably not going to get there every single week. Tight ends, though, we'll start it off with Cade Otton. Cade Otton's is this sums it up well. Cade Otton's a 0 EPA. On 3.8 targets. So that inherently should make him average. We will establish him as the middle point. 3.8 targets, no value added. That is where Cade Otton goes. Chika Okonkwo is playing like crap this year. So far, negative 0.1 EPA per target, 3.3 targets per game. So slightly worse spot. Playing slightly worse. He goes right here. Cole Kmet had the one big game this week. He is up to a 0.3 EPA per target, 6 targets per game. This is like manna from heaven to see one tight end actually playing okay. He can go, honestly, he might be fucking up here when we're done, but he can go right here for now with the 0.3 EPA per target. Not getting a whole lot of red zone work, but still getting 0.8 red zone targets per game, 0.3 inside the 5-yard line. That is good for Cole Kmet. Dallas Goedert, one of the biggest tight end disappointments of the year. Getting closer to neutral, though. Negative 0.04 EPA. Last year, he was the highest graded tight end in that metric with, I believe, a 0.4 overall. So he's got room to grow here, but the offense changing over might make it so he never gets there. Getting 4.8 targets per game. 0.8 inside the red zone. Usage is not great. Play is not great. He is currently in the middle of these two guys and honestly playing a little bit worse than Cade Otton. So he goes right there. Dalton Kincaid, 0.09 EPA per target, 4.3 targets per game. A lot of these numbers starting to sound very similar, but Dalton Kincaid, slightly better usage and slightly better overall than Cade Otton, so he can go right here. Thank you. I thought that Otton did a good job setting the table for what exactly is an average tight end in every possible way. Dalton Schultz, negative 0.1 EPA per target, 4.3 targets per game. He is the bad version of Dalton Kincaid. Two Daltons, both of them not playing that great, but they are both tight ends, and that is all you need. It's just to play a person at tight end and hope they get you 4 to 8 targets. Darnell Washington, we're not going to rank. Darren Waller, shockingly, positive EPA, 0.08 EPA on the year, 5.8 targets. 0.3 deep targets per game, 0.5 inside the red zone. Worst version of Cole Kmet right now is Darren Waller. David Njoku, 0.1 EPA per target, 4.8 targets per game. Tight ends are all the same person. He is basically slightly less good spot than Darren Waller. Similar player. I think these guys are flat as players, but the role is a little bit better for Darren Waller. God, tight end. Just get rid of tight ends. That's how I'm feeling when we do this every week. Dawson Knox. Negative 0.15 EPA per target, 3 targets per game. That is bad even for a tight end. He's going to have some spike weeks, getting 1 red zone target per game, 0.5 inside the 5-yard line. But he is playing worse than Chig with less volume. So he gets to go. He's basically playing the same as Chig. He goes right here. Dawson Knox, though, bust of a pick here. Definitely one that a lot of people got talked into as a late tight end. And it seems like right now, you'd still rather have a Hunter Henry. Would rather definitely have a Laporta. Maybe a Musgrave over Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox looking like he was appropriately ADP priced in the offseason. Evan Ingram, 0.2 EPA per target, 7.3 targets. Jesus, he's actually doing something here. Not quite as efficient as Cole Kmet, but better volume. Evan Ingram goes right there. George Kittle going to be a disappointment, but playing well analytically. 0.46 EPA per target. The issue is getting 4.8 of them per game. He's also getting only 0.5 red zone targets per game. That's not great usage, but he's hella efficient. The hella is back. Apparently, when you do a 2.5 hour long video, the hellas come out. George Kittle, I think, better version of David Njoku, playing well, most efficient tight end that we've talked about so far. Gerald Everett. Barely a dude. Now Gerald Everett playing well. 0.36 EPA per target, 3.5 per game. That puts him Cade Otton tier, but playing better than him. Gerald Everett goes right here. Efficient, not getting volume, and volume did not increase, unfortunately, with Mike Williams being out. That could change over the course of time. We do have Donald Parham also banged up, so Everett can have some spike weeks, but he's playing efficient enough that I think one more guy going out there could mean that a spike week is forthcoming. Hunter Henry coming back down to earth. No, Hunter Henry's still very efficient. 0.54 EPA per target is down in terms of the overall targets, though. It's a 5.8. Getting 0.5 red zone targets per game, which he has all converted, all of them into a touchdown. So Hunter Henry, I think, more efficient right now than all of these guys, but the volume is getting a little bit worse. So Hunter Henry goes right there. And that might be enough relative to ADP, at least, to be an apex predator. Juwan Johnson, also playing terribly. Negative 0.5 EPA per target, 4 intended touches per game. No red zone work. This role for Juwan Johnson has gotten a lot worse over the course of this year, and he is playing terribly. He deserves to be all the way down here. Worst version of Chig with a slightly better role is where he's going to go. Kyle Pitts, negative 0.2 EPA per target. That sucks because last year he still had that going for him in terms of being a positive EPA per target guy. Down to 5.3 targets per game, still at 59.6 air yards per game. So I guess that's something. He wins the Air Yards Award for the Falcons. 0.8 deep targets per game, catching 0.3 of them, all of which are the catchable balls. He's getting crippled by this team. He's getting crippled overall. His growth is being stunted as a result of being an Atlanta Falcon. He goes on the downside here. Bad version of Cole Kmet is Kyle Pitts right now. Luke Musgrave, 0.2 EPA per target, 4 targets per game. Really thought he would get more work, getting 0.8 deep targets per game, 0.8 inside the red zone. Usage is there. Musgrave might be out again this week. Actually, Musgrave's status, a very important litmus test for the concussion stuff, because basically, if Luke Musgrave plays this week, that means that you actually can play the week after concussion if it is a Thursday night game going forward. If he doesn't play this week, that means that basically anytime you have a concussion, you're never going to play the ensuing week, because we've now seen that from enough guys. So just something to keep in mind here. Very important to see what Musgrave does this week, just to know how the league is going overall. Anyway, he's pretty efficient. The volume is basically Njoku. He and Njoku, I would say, pretty much the same here. And Musgrave's role might get a little bit worse with Christian Watson. The Watson should open up some stuff underneath for him. So that could be good for Musgrave. But Musgrave for right now, not doing enough. Mark Andrews. Oh, Mark Andrews looking good. 0.5 EPA per target, still 6 targets per game. You would think that he's getting a little bit more. Is getting 1 red zone target per game, 0.3 inside the 5-yard line per game, which basically means that he's gotten 1 target, I think, so far for Mark Andrews. But I think with his efficiency metrics, a little bit less volume, he is basically a little bit worse than Hunter Henry, but in a slightly better spot. That is where Mark Andrews goes. Oh, we are so close to being done, guys. Can you feel it? Michael Mayer. Oh, no. Michael Mayer, the worst tight end in football right now. -2 EPA per target on his 0.5 targets per game. He's still playing 29 snaps per game, but didn't get targeted last game out, I don't believe. Michael Mayer has to go right down. This is the worst. This is a bad rollout. Again, the Raiders going the wrong way is probably a good thing for Michael Mayer. For right now, though, he is so uninvolved, so useless. It is a terrible situation for Michael Mayer, as the rookie tight end, by the way, who had the most pedigree coming in, and that's not where we are. Noah Fant's crushing on the year relative to EPA, 0.9 EPA per target, 2.8 intended touches per game, though. That is not enough volume to get there. He's analytically the best tight end in football right now, but the volume is absolutely useless, so he has to go behind Dawson Knox in terms of volume, in terms of the spot. Pat Freiermuth, -0.4 EPA per target. He is sinking like a stone with the Steelers offense. 3.3 targets per game. Jesus Christ. He's as bad as Chig, as bad as Knox. Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end hope. It's 0.21 EPA per target, 6.8 intended touches per game. That's pretty good. Only 0.5 inside the red zone per game, which could be better. Laporta, though, I mean, he deserves to be right here. Not as efficient as these guys, but usage-wise, a little bit more. He's basically flat with Mark Andrews. Maybe slightly better role than Mark Andrews. I think that's 1-to-1, but a pretty good spot for Sam Laporta. I'm definitely not mad at that. He's one of my highest exposed tight ends, of course. I was a big believer in the rookie tight ends, so hopefully he can prop up some of the lineups with Michael Mayer doing nothing. TJ Hawkinson. Hawk, 0.07 EPA per target, 7.8 targets per game, though, is going to be the best mark in the league. Also, 1.8 red zone targets per game is the best tight end role in football. That is not Travis Kelce right now, but he's playing a little bit worse than Evan Ingram and also a little bit worse than Laporta. Hawkinson goes right here. Big Sammy Laporta, that guy's a ball player. He is, and we knew that early on, which I think, again, there were 4 tight ends to really target, and I think 3 of them are doing some approximation of what they were supposed to do. Laporta's the best of those 3, of course, with Musgrave and also with Dalton Kincaid. All right, Travis Kelce. This will be a good one here. Have you guys heard about this whole thing of him dating Taylor Swift? I don't think that's what I think it's been covered anywhere. It's fucking ending his salary with $89 on FanDuel is my least favorite thing that's ever occurred. Travis Kelce, 0.13 EPA per target. So he's looking a lot more like a TJ Hawkinson. 8.7 targets per game, 2 of which are inside the red zone. Travis Kelce, better version of Hawkinson, best usage in the league, but analytically not as efficient as some of these guys. And Trey McBride, I don't think, is he touch pushing her? Since when? I hadn't heard. I didn't know. We don't need to do Trey McBride, right? Zach Ertz / Trey McBride. Zach Ertz getting 7.5 intended touches per game, -0.14 EPA per target. So Trey McBride here would be, as Zach Ertz, would be pretty good usage, but not playing that well. Kyle Pitts would be what I would say for Trey McBride. There we go, guys. So I promised this earlier, and I'm just going to do it. I don't care if this video has been 2 hours and 26 minutes. Check out the sick video I made showing you how to use Probably. Of course, Probably, my startup. You can check out for yourself at probably.com. And let's watch this very short video to explain how to use my app, the app that I put my heart and love in to help you get in good bets at probably.com. did a marketing agency come in? Do an ad, but go check it out at probably.com. That is my baby. We're going to be turning on the paywall soon, but it's actually still not going to affect what you guys see. You will still be able to sort through, find a needle in a haystack of good bets. Always, what's going to happen is we're going to charge people for the ability to sort by most profitable bets. So to make the process faster, that's what we're going to be charging for, along with the live in-game data. But check it out, probably.com. Please support your boys Spags, because we got to get money going on there soon. We'll hopefully have the memberships going, and I will certainly harass you guys to sign up for memberships when that time comes. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. Of course, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button before you go. Splash Play on the march to 3K subs. Videos every single day, Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. Doesn't matter how long they take. They get done either way. Shout out to the chat as always. Appreciate all of you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a friend. And of course, wish you guys the best of luck this weekend. But come back tomorrow. Showdown tomorrow. Friday, the Fantasy Football Gauntlet. We'll build lineups a bunch of different ways. Have some fun with it. I will see you guys then. Enjoy your weeks. And of course, good luck. Bye.